to gather information to continue to provide the best service to the town of Chelmsford that we can. There may be issues that come up tonight because we don't know what issues are going to come up, where we don't have an answer right away. So please don't be frustrated if we don't have some specific data or whatever that you might be interested in. But other than that, we'll try to do the best job that we can. So if someone would like to kick it off, we can go to the microphone and start things up. Sure.
You want to have one of your members come in and work your PowerPoint right here?
If somebody can come up?
That would be great.
So we have actually 2 handouts for everybody. I'll make sure you're in the extra sheet. We'll pass them out. And it's going to be on the board as well. This last sheet that Mary Ann is handing out is actually in your PowerPoint. I would like you to flip it in the bold because the numbers is really what's driven our presentation.
Ask for our contact information. It's on the last page of the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Marianne, how are you? Nice to meet you too.
Oh, it's this thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So if you guys could look at the presentation and the numbers, kind of at the same time. We also have the numbers attached in the back. And if you go too fast, you can just cut there.
Yeah, I think they were going to.
Absolutely. Okay.
My first school committee meeting of the community I went to this year.
Yep. Okay.
Near the end of the 80s.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to present before you tonight. My name is Mary Ann Hall. I live at 46 Chestnut Hill Road in Chelmsford, and this is Tanya Bearworth. She lives at 7 Reed Road. We're here tonight because we have concerns that we want to present to you regarding the current 3rd grade classroom sizes at the Byam Elementary School. As you can see, we're not alone in our concern. We have several parents here from the Byam School representing us as well.
Can any Byam parent raise their hand from the 3rd grade?
Great, thank you. We've put together a presentation for you that we'd like to share with you tonight. So, Ariane, if you could please go to slide 2. So this slide right here just shows our objective. Sorry, this slide right here just shows our agenda. I'm not going to read each bullet point right now in interest of time, but we're going to cover each one of these topics on individual slides. I'll give you a moment to look at the agenda. Okay, if you could go to slide 3, please. Thank you. So we are here tonight because we really have 2 objectives. Our main objective is we want to increase to 5 classrooms for the 2016-2017 4th grade class at the Byam Elementary School. We currently have 4. We also want to request an additional licensed teacher for the remainder of this year to help with the class sizes. Ariane, if you could just go to the next slide, you'll see. So as you can see here, we have really large classrooms right now. We have a total of 106 students at Byam in the 3rd grade. We have 2 classes that have 26 students, and we have 2 classes that have 27 students. This gives us a class average of 26.5 students at the Byam 3rd grade elementary school. We also provided you with a handout that we'd like you to look at. It's highlighted in yellow. You'll see that there is another class at Byam with there's another class in town at Harrington that has 106 students, but they have 5 classrooms.
So she's talking about this additional one. So we've highlighted in yellow. We've highlighted in yellow what she's talking about. So that's the additional one we've just passed out.
Could you just give your name and address, excuse me, just for the record?
I'm Tanya Bearworth, and I live at 7 Reed Road in Chelmsford.
Thank you.
So we just wanted to show you that there's another class in town with the same amount of students. The difference is they have 5 classrooms and we have 4. Okay, if you could go to the next slide. So this slide really speaks for itself. You can see here that we have a huge discrepancy in the classroom sizes amongst the 3rd grade. Byam has 106 students, Center has 86, Harrington has 85, and South Row has 75. The next closest class size to us is the Center School at 21.5 students in each class. That's 5 less bodies in each class than our children have today. Huge discrepancy. We also wanted to let you know that we confirmed, we've done a lot of research, that the Byam 3rd grade elementary class currently holds the greatest class average compared to all the elementary schools in Chelmsford at 26.5. All right, next slide.
So this is a very difficult slide to read. We're not asking you to read this entire slide. We found this on the Chelmsford Public School website. It's 6302 under the school committee policy site. So we've actually highlighted some points on the next slide. So the Chelmsford School Policy recommends, and they believe that manageable class size in grades K through 12 is an important factor in providing quality education. A maximum of 25 students in grade 2 through 4 for classrooms not serving students with severe learning needs. We are currently exceeding this. And let's not forget, at the Byam School, we have a wonderful program. All of these classes do have children with severe learning needs. So according to the policy, it's recommended that it's actually less than 25. So Byam has 4 classes that are over 25. So that's 4 sections that are over. So if it's 3 or more sections that are over 25, is identification of an additional teacher classroom. It's recommended. We understand recommended, but a teacher classroom. Also, because we're over 25 in all 4 sections, viable short-term space alternatives. You know, flexible space, community resources, or possibly the lease of temporary classrooms. So let's take a step back from the 3rd grade. This is as a parent, and a lot of parents and guardians, we're just trying to figure out how is class size determined. So I have a child in 4th grade. We have 98 students on October 1st. Actually, currently, we have 100. On October 1st, we had 98 students in the 4th grade. Harrington has 98 students in the 4th grade. We have 4 classrooms, they have 5. Last year, we had 5 4th grade classrooms. Somehow, it got taken away, and I'm not saying it appeared in Harrington, but I mean, we're trying to figure out, is somebody looking at the overall picture? You know, we speak with Fredette, Mr. Fredette, you know, who's looking at the overall picture? So, you know, we think, like, was a teacher moved from Byam to Harrington when we're in the greatest need? Yes.
What happened to the physical space?
The physical space, we believe it was Mr. Graber, who's our music, was moved into the physical space. He was in, I don't want to say it's he was in a closet. I mean, it's not really a closet, but I've actually seen it. I don't know if that's the right word. A special ed or a specialist. I don't know the exact terminology.
But he was moved to a classroom.
Right.
He was moved to a classroom that used to be housed by another teacher of an academic grade level. So let's go back to the Byam 3rd grade. We started the year with 104 students. That's 26 in each class. You know, we're still trying to figure out where a greater need. How was this teacher, how did it leave Byam and we think appeared in Harrington? We're not talking about the actual teacher, but the actual position. We have a greater need. So then going on this classroom sizing, you know, we're at South Row. I'm pretty sure they have 2 module units. I believe they might be housing 1st grade, that's not the issue, but they have 2 module units, and they have 18, let's say 19 kids, and they have 22 kids per class. You know, we're struggling with 26, 27, and they have 2 extra units, and they're 18, 19, and 22. So we're just trying to look at the bigger picture, because we don't know. You know, I know it changes year to year, but how is it determined? So here are some concerns, and they're obviously not just our concerns. We've talked to a lot of parents. You know, we obviously have the highest student-teacher elementary ratio in Chelmsford. There's a huge disparity, as Marianne stated, with the numbers. Classes compared to Center, Harrington, and South Row. Give me that again. One thing I want to say, I mean, this is another issue. Byam is 482 students. Harrington is 465, so we're just under 20 more than Harrington. Our buildings, I was told, were built pretty much a year apart, so they have the similar blueprints. We have 17 usable classrooms at the moment. They have 18. We have more kids, and I'm talking about for K through 12 structured classes, not for specialists or any special programs. We have, K through 4. We have 17 classrooms. They have 18. And I mean, that's just, we're trying to figure out the space, and it was music taken up on that classroom. So the students and teachers are absolutely at a disadvantage, a significant disadvantage. You know, it's a crowded classroom. I mean, me and Marianne, we could stand this close. If I'm done with my work, you know, Marianne might be struggling. You know, I'm a kid. I might, talk to her. You know, I'm disadvantaged. I'm taking away from her learning time. Let's also talk about their third graders. I have a third grader and I have a fourth grader. They grow. You're going to stick 26, 27 kids in a fourth grade classroom, they're going to take up more space. Also, down the road, it's going to be happening soon. There's continued construction on 110. That's currently in the Byam district. So that's just going to add to the overload of kids at Byam. And we met with Mr. Fredette, great meeting with him. There's no more usable classroom space without displacing a specialist. So again, we talked to a lot of parents. Here is some feedbacks about these large classroom limitations. Space for movement and ideal seating arrangements. I mean, if you have 5 friends in a classroom, they're chatting, you move them over here, and now they're talking to that friend. And then they're talking to this friend. You know, if you take 5 kids out per classroom, you have more space. And the large classroom sizes are strained to the teachers. I know I have spoken with teachers, and most of these parents have, and they're doing everything they can to help our students. Here are some teacher limitations. It limits their ability to teach individually in small groups. It also limits the reading and math specialists at Byam. So I was told that all elementary schools have 2 reading specialists. So let's compare Byam versus South Row. We have almost 100 more students. So now these reading specialists for these kids who might need that extra help, they're not seeing them regularly. So you're getting more teacher time, just for example, at South Row, because they have almost 100 less students. I mean, it speaks for itself. Byam students are receiving inequitable teaching time. Also, there's been so much research. There's different types of learners. There's visual, there's auditory, there's tactile, and there's interactive. I mean, with 26, 27 kids, how can you meet all their needs? And again, this is not about the teachers. Not all of us, I know I've spoken with teachers and they have responded and they have done everything they could to help me with my child in the class. We're trying to figure out how to help them teach our children. It also limits the ability to attend to the average learners. About the readers? Yes, that's yours.
Okay.
This is the average learner.
So we have been told that currently at the Byam School, approximately 40% of the children in 3rd grade are below the current reading level. And that's because the teachers just can't meet all their needs due to the number of students that they have. That's a pretty low number.
What was that figure again?
40%.
Can you repeat what you just said?
We have been told that 40% of the 3rd grade students at Byam are currently below the expected reading level. Normally at this time of the year, it's at 25%. And the reason is because they have too many...
Tanya, I apologize. Who
I'm
told you
Marianne.
that? You're Miriam?
We heard it from a parent.
You're Miriam.
I'm Marianne. We heard it from a parent who had meetings with the teachers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The average at this point of the year is 25%, but currently we're striving at 40% because the teachers just can't meet the needs of all these kids because they have too many.
And lastly, with these large class sizes, These teachers, it's limiting their ability to challenge the advanced learners. I mean, we're talking all learners on the spectrum.
So next we wanted to share with you the recent MCAS scores that have been published. Although we have seen some improvement in Byam, we did want to point out that for the past 3 years, both in math and ELA, Byam has scored below the district average. I know I don't want to score below. We want to be above average. We don't want to be below average. And we can't help but to think that if we don't fix these classroom sizes, that we're going to continue to trend in this direction.
Are they limited to this year that we're talking about, the current third grade, or are these overall?
This is overall that we received from our principal. He sent it out last week. I believe this encompasses both third and fourth grade. I have it here if you'd like to see it.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, I actually have the note from the principal if you need it, okay?
Okay.
Can I see that?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to go to the next one?
So I know that we've given you a lot of information and we've been doing a lot of talking. Now we want to present our solution to you. As you can tell, we want to have another classroom added to Byam for the fourth grade 2016-2017 year. We believe, in looking at the handout that we presented you, we have the numbers highlighted in green, that there will be a surplus of 1 teacher at the end of this year at the Harrington School. We would like to propose that this teacher or this position be moved back to Byam to service the incoming fourth grade class. As Tanya mentioned, we did meet with Mr. Fredette last week. He did explain to us that there would be space challenges in doing this. We believe we have a solution. The music room, which is currently used for music, was previously used as a classroom. We would like to present that this music room be given back as a classroom for the teachers and have the music be serviced to the children in their individual rooms. Again, we spent some time with Mr. Fredette, and we believe that this would be the least disruptive if you compare all the different specialists that are currently serving students in different classrooms at Byam. Or, another option, which is in your Chelmsford school policy, would be to place a modular unit for this additional classroom. But we understand that the school is faced with budget constraints, so our top solution actually wouldn't cost any additional cost to the town of Chelmsford.
So Mary Ann just spoke about next year. You know, I'm concerned about this year. First off, I mean, we've talked about MCAS. I am not in a classroom. People look at scores. I don't know how a teacher can help a child do well on the MCAS with 26, 27 students in the classroom. I mean, we're already below average. I'm not trying to project us being below average, but I mean, if South Row is getting 1 teacher per 18 or 22 kids, it's just more, they're aiding the kids in helping them prepare for the MCAS. Some of these kids have never taken this test. So my proposal is to change it right now. We would like to request an additional licensed teacher in classroom for the remainder of this year, and that's taken straight from the policy website, not an additional support, an additional teacher classroom. And as Mary Ann had stated on the last slide, we can use the music room. The music room is a true classroom. It's not an extra classroom off the side. And then Mr. Graber could provide music to the students in the classroom. I mean, I know it would be a little bit of a cost, maybe find a long-term sub. I mean, I know as a parent, 26, 27, if you pull 5 kids out of each classroom, now your average is down to 20, 21, maybe 22. So, or possibly look into modular units. So we've given you a proposal for this upcoming year. I mean, we're halfway through the school year. Why not start now? Imagine these kids going into 4th grade being behind the curve, you know, even a little bit. Now you're putting strain on the 4th grade teachers. I'd like to stop the bleeding now. Next. Oh. So let's just recap. So the policy is a recommendation of class size of 25 students maximum per class, in a classroom without students with severe learning needs. So in Byam, we do have some of those students integrated into our classrooms. Another concern is that Byam lost a 4th grade teacher. You know, we're trying to figure out who looks at the big picture. I'm sure Mr. Fredette looks at Byam. The other principals look at their schools. Is there somebody who looks at the big picture and kind of sees how everything's getting shuffled around? The Byam third graders, they're getting a non-equitable level of quality of education. That not only affects the regular education classrooms, but also the service providers and the non-academic specialists. I mean, let's look at music, let's look at art. They're seeing more kids, and they're trying to do projects for more kids and have these more kids enjoy the arts. So we also want to follow up and find out some next steps.
Yeah, but before we conclude, we just wanted to thank you for your time this evening. We realize that we provided a lot of information to you. As you can see, we're very passionate about the quality of our children's education, and we're really here tonight because we want what the majority of the remaining of the Chelmsford elementary students have today in this town. They have low, manageable classroom sizes. Our kids deserve it, they have it, that's what we want. So we'd like to turn this back to you to determine what is our next steps and follow-ups and takeaways from this meeting.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate it. My approach to tonight, without really talking to the other committee members, was this is a good forum for people to be able to bring their concerns forward. I knew you were going to bring this issue forward. I don't know what other issues would be out there, but I intended to kind of take track of any of the issues that came up, and then obviously work with the school committee on putting a response together. I can tell you, off the top of my head, without getting too deep into to details on this. Certainly, the class size is something that I look at, and it is something that I look at when we're talking about budget preparation for next year. The Byam School third grade class size being the highest at third grade obviously jumps out at you. The same way at Center School this year, their fourth grade is high. And I can't explain to you, why, both have the 26. The good part for Center School next year is that those fourth graders are moving on to fifth grade, but I feel, equally as concerned for those students in the fourth grade at Center as I do for the third grade in Byam. But this is stuff that we actually look at when we're going into the year, and certainly that teacher you referenced at the Harrington, that's a fourth grader that's filtering out, and we would look to see where that would actually go into the equation to help potentially with class size going forward. So I definitely think response-wise, for putting some kind of a structured response together for next year certainly is appropriate, and we can do that in a pretty short order. I think my bigger concern, and this is just speaking off the cuff with regard to the current year, my concerns about the solution of actually kind of hiring a new teacher at this point, divvying up the classrooms, and doing this probably right as we're getting into late February, early March, getting ready for MCAS, is really doing a disservice to the 5 or so students from each classroom that would be removed to go to the new teacher. It's incredibly hard to actually to hire really good quality teachers for the start of a school year, and we're actually going to start within the next month and a half or so of our recruitment effort to fill known vacancies that we have for next year. But to actually find a good, competent, quality teacher to come in at this case and actually remove 5 kids from each of the 4 classes to make a standalone classroom, I think would actually be more harmful than it would be helpful, getting the masses ready for the accommodations for the spring. Can we take a look at the existing resources in the school or the district to possibly help those existing 4 classes? Certainly, and I can respond to that working with the administration team. But just off the top of my head, I think I would have concerns that if I were a parent, I certainly, I don't want this to be a contentious issue within the school, but I wouldn't want to be one of the parents who, by luck, happen to be one of the 5 that gets removed from the class, who already has a relationship with the teacher and is.
I've got the answer.
Go ahead.
You can move my child. I understand totally.
Right.
You can move my child. And if he has an issue, you can move him.
I appreciate you offering that.
Take him.
I will then have concerns for everyone else's
And
children.
we only suggested that because that is in your school policy.
Right.
It's one of the recommendations.
And it is a recommendation, and I think, what we'll do is go back at this point and actually, take a look at those policies, and we'll certainly have a response for you. I'm just kind of telling you, because I didn't know that was going to be something you were going to recommend, what my initial reaction to that would be. And again, it would just be concern around, even just altering, the existing kind of building layouts and platforms and schedules. And again, I do think that could be more disruptive than it would potentially be helpful, for the remainder of the school year. But can certainly look at some of the other responses or some of the other suggestions you've made, and in relatively short notice, certainly communicate that back to the school. And I'll meet with the school committee and discuss that, and we can get an announcement out to the third grade parents just to keep everyone in the loop with whatever we decide.
Okay, when should we expect to receive that?
Within the next couple of weeks,
Okay.
yeah, before February vacation.
Okay, and just so we can be clear, our main objective was to get the class added for next
For
year?
next year, I got that.
Okay, this was our secondary objective.
Right.
And then I just had one other thing. When is Miss Streeter coming back? Does anybody know? March. So I do know in March, a teacher is coming back from maternity leave. And right now, we have a current teacher in their place. So I don't know if that maybe might help us in March. I don't know if that's too late. I don't know if she could be used in the building to help these teachers. That's not something we discussed. I just kind of thought of it. My child is in a different classroom, but maybe another set of hands can help.
No, I appreciate that, and I will go back with the team and look at the whole matter. I'll talk to Mr. Fedett and the staff at the school, and we'll craft a response that we'll share with the school committee, at our next meeting. And I plan on doing that for each of these items that come up tonight, have there be a response, and then we can certainly communicate that out to you. But, I want to alleviate your fears. This is something that we're certainly looking to address for the next school year. It's the interim step that I really have to do some work on.
Okay, great. And I just want to make one more point. My daughter and many of the parents here tonight had a fourth grader that graduated from Byam last year. They're now fifth graders. They had 105 students, and they always had 5 classes.
Yeah,
They always had 5 classes.
Right.
So
I can't speak to, why there was 5 or 4.
I know you weren't there then, but I just wanted to let you know we've had it in the past. We just want to have it back.
Thank you. And again, the tact I'll take, if this is helpful, as we're looking across really all grade levels at all schools, I think what probably happened is earlier on, grades, K1, 2, you probably had a high class size, and at that point in time, they added the 5th section, and then that typically rides out for the remainder of the time. I don't know what the discussion was to have that be modified, but it's certainly on the agenda when we're putting the budget together.
Thank you. Do you recommend that we stay for the school committee meeting?
I recommend
Do you recommend that we stay for the meeting, or will this subject be discussed?
You're certainly welcome to. I don't know if people have other comments or concerns, but it's totally up to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time.
Do you have any other questions?
Does a committee member have any question or comment that they'd like to make? Yeah.
So, Mary Ann, Tanya, I just want to say that was very thoughtful, very articulate, very substantive presentation you made. I agree with the strategy of a balanced school system. So we hear you loud and clear. 1 out of 5 votes, we're going to take that back from my perspective. Let's take that back. I hear you loud and clear, and I agree with you. How do you like that? So I'm going to work hard.
It's not just us, it's all the Byam parents.
Well, there's a big role that everybody on this board fills, and so we're going to find out a little bit more information. I'm going to try to do a little bit more homework, but I thought it was a great presentation, and you're very passionate, and I applaud you for fighting hard for our kids. We appreciate it because you're another set of eyes, so thank you.
Thank you.
Contact information in the back.
If I can, I just actually had one more question for you. I know in the past, obviously, it was either art or music was on a cart, basically, and because that extra classroom space is an issue. So I know that had to happen. What was the parents' feeling when you had to have one of the allied arts displaced or, kind of service the school in the cart? Is there a general kind of parent perspective on that? Is that acceptable? Is that going to be objectionable to other parents? Do we know where people stand
When we
on it?
met with Mr. Fredette, he said there's 5 specialists right now serving in different classrooms at Byam. Art, music, reading and math specialists. So the reading and math specialists are in 3 different classrooms. Art is in one, music is in the other. We talked through it, the 3 of us, and his suggestion that music would be the least disruptive. We certainly don't want to ask we certainly don't want to ask reading or math to have to move, because those are the other to service the needs of the children. We felt this would be the least disruptive. We did speak to some of these parents here as well. They were in agreement. Do you guys agree? We don't want to, and it has happened in the past, and it's
I
worked
was
well.
just more curious.
Art would be a little bit more challenging due to all the supplies. So we thought we would present music to you. And should anyone need to reach us, our information is on the last page of the presentation.
Okay. If you actually email me a copy of the PowerPoint.
I'd be happy
and then
to.
any handouts, I'll put a little packet together for the whole night meeting, and we'll get that online just so that people can actually go back and look at the different topics that came up.
Great, I'd be happy to. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for all the time and effort that you put into this preparation. And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to assure you that all of us are concerned about this situation and appreciate you coming forward. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm John Libby, 23 Cathy Road, and I want to talk about the revisiting of the holiday policy. First of all, I want to start with thanking the school committee for soliciting public feedback in that. Having said that, I don't know a single parent who knew what the survey was asking until it was clarified, and therefore I'm encouraging, I have no idea what the results of the survey are, but I don't think they're going to be that valid because I don't think what was being asked was clear. My concern about revisiting the holiday policy is a couple of different things. I really spent a lot of time thinking about this, and one of the questions my mind comes back to is, okay, why does it hit a button for me that minority students need to identify themselves to get days off or homework made up? No, they do. What's being proposed.
Absolutely don't. They do not need to identify themselves. Absolutely.
Under the proposal to get rid of the holiday policy, which was one of the questions on the survey, you would need to do that.
I don't think there was any hint of that. You write a note, the parent writes a note, you're the parent. Write a note, please excuse my child's absence and allow that child to make up any work that was missed. End of story.
Which still requires identification, whether it's done by the parent or by the
I
child.
was out sick with a sore throat and you wrote that note.
Would you mind letting me finish talking, please? Thank you. As I said, I've given a lot of thought to why that hits a button, why that's a concern. And I think that's a concern for the Jewish community, for the Hindu community, for the Muslim community, because, and I don't know how to say this without making some people feel defensive, there has not been a very good history in the Chelmsford Public Schools in terms of being friendly to diversity. And other people can go into that history better and more articulately than I can. That's my concern, is students having to self-identify. And I also think there, if I look at common themes of things, one of the things I just heard a very good presentation about was about equity across the school system. I also look at really equity for all of our students, whether they're members of minorities or not. And I think that that's one of the goals of having a holiday policy. And right now, majority culture students or their parents don't need to identify their holidays, our days off. Right now, the way the policy currently exists, there are some holidays that are recognized, there are some that are not. There have also been issues of the implementation of the existing policy, including at open houses, teachers openly disparaging the policy and talking about how they feel it's a tremendous burden to have a couple days a year that they're not allowed to give homework or give tests. It's a concern, it's a big concern. And I'm urging the school committee not only to not get rid of the holiday policy, but to expand it to include other minority groups. I looked at some of the calendars of neighboring school districts in Boston and other things. We're talking about a grand total of, on average, 1 to 2 days a month. We're not talking about a huge number of days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shoshana Perry. I'm the rabbi at Congregation Shalom, and I've had the honor over 18 years, multiple times, to come to the school committee to talk about issues around tolerance and diversity and how all children are treated in the school system. I know I've been through 3 superintendents with this issue and have been at meetings with many clergy. I've been there with you, Evelyn, and Al, where the entire clergy association would come and speak in support of this policy. Very sadly, we were all here when Dr. Tiana was superintendent and the school system chose to start school on Rosh Hashanah, despite the fact that we told them the dates on the calendar. John didn't say it, but his daughter was starting kindergarten, and the school system refused to change, and young children were penalized starting their careers at this school system because this was the only school system in the entire area. I called every neighboring school system that chose to start school on Rosh Hashanah, and I include the Boston school system. I called the head of the calendaring office in Boston just a month ago when this survey came out. They said they would never, ever start school on a Jewish holiday, or if Eid was at that time in September, because that holiday rotates throughout the year at the end of Ramadan. And I have to say that this is really just one speck of an iceberg that has to do with an issue of tolerance of all faiths. When I first came and spoke with the committee under Dr. Yeoman, I asked the school committee to follow the Boston city policy, which is now similar to what Westford does. If you look at the Westford calendar, it has most of the high holy days of every faith listed. Boston does as well. You could Google right now the Boston calendar and see in the lower corner the holidays of Islam and Chinese New Year and Diwali and Judaism. And so teachers would understand that the students in their class come from a huge diverse background. Chelmsford is not just one faith. We have more and more members of our community coming from countries of other ethnic backgrounds and religious practices, and there is just not, I hate to say this, either historically at the systemic level here, always a tolerance for that. Within the teachers union, there's been fighting back around issues around being able to have Good Friday off, but why does Good Friday get off, but then you don't have these other holidays off, and they're willing to negotiate that in the school contract. Days that you can start school before Labor Day, so that it plays with the ability to have more freedom. If the teachers really are so concerned about this issue, then they should be negotiating those things. Other school districts do not give Good Friday off, and you can't have an egalitarian system and continue to give Good Friday off. I understand that Easter is a Sunday, and I understand that Christmas is over winter holiday, and those kids aren't going to be here. But kids are not going to be getting homework or tests the day after Easter. I can tell you those teachers know when Easter is, and they're not going to be assigning things when they know those kids are coming back from that. And you need to, I hope, see that it would be helpful to educate the teachers and the principals about when those other holidays are that the children of the school system are experiencing. Now, I can also tell you when we spoke around the time that Rosh Hashanah was on the first day, we brought teenagers to our meeting. There are kids in our synagogue who have experienced real overt anti-Semitism, both from other students and even teachers in the high school. That is just not acceptable. There are parents here who are going to speak about teachers in their open night, the open houses, disparaging how they have to not give homework and tests on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That is unacceptable. In a classroom filled with parents, for a teacher to say, I can't give a test because of a Jewish holiday. That happens in this school district. It's just not okay. And I also really believe that we should be doing this for the kids who celebrate Diwali or Eid. If either you go to a complete egalitarian system or a system that is inclusive. Westford currently has, I think, kind of a morphed system that I think can work, which includes on the calendar all the holidays, and that every kid can be excused for those holidays by writing a letter, but they write it to one person, like to the guidance counselor, saying, and a kid shouldn't, by the way, have to lie that they're sick. I mean, I was listening to your comment. No, I know, but, okay. I mean, a parent should be proud that they can say what their faith is and their kid's faith. But the teachers then can't call them out in class, and they do, especially in the high school. I know it because I've had students who have had it happen. And And I know that it's just not anti-Semitism. I'm sure there are children in the school system who are Muslim and they get harassed. I am sure there are kids who are Sikhs and they get harassed. In the Boston school system, they send every year to the parents paperwork about their diversity policy and what to do if they feel their children are not being respected and what the plan is. The school system is making a statement. Parents, we care about your kids' feelings. If your kids are feeling as if they're being picked on, this is what you do to address it. I don't think we do that. I know that several years ago we talked about the need for diversity training. I'm not sure where that has gone. And I just see it as both the smaller picture and the bigger picture. And I would really encourage the school committee that if you're considering changing it, to really be reflective about what that means. Because taking it away but leaving Good Friday and not adding these other elements is going backwards.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I wish I could have had some of my students come because I know some of their stories are pretty poignant. And unfortunately, they're home doing homework tonight.
I wish they wouldn't keep their stories to themselves. I urge them.
They have come, yeah. Some of you have heard their stories before.
They need to go to their guidance counselor.
They have. They've gone to,
Information not being passed on.
well, I mean, some of it, you have to realize that sometimes things are overt and sometimes things are very subtle. A teacher who makes a comment like, I can't believe I can't give you tests, wouldn't say that was, a hate statement. But, it's subtle.
It's unacceptable.
But it is unacceptable. But also, a kid in our elementary school just started hearing Christmas carols over and over and over again on the school bus this year. And when the little kid asked the bus driver if they could play other music or Hanukkah music, the bus driver said, no, this is my music. And the parent could tell you more about it. And get pushed back to this little kid who was trying to say, where's the diversity in the music? Those things happen, and we need to care about this not for the Jewish kids, but for all kids. And I'm willing to sit down and work with you, and I think this is a possible step to move forward to greater acceptance. But as long as it just goes back to what it is, or the idea that someone isn't looking at the calendar and will start school on Rosh Hashanah and think that's okay, on Rosh Hashanah and that's okay, that's still not seeing the problem. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry we were unable to meet last week.
That's okay.
I would love to sit down and have coffee with you and talk about this. I know that school systems are trying to work toward what I call a secular calendar. And I understand that we can't get there until all of our employees, everyone who interacts with our children, is accepting of their need to be absent on a day to celebrate a high holy day. It's unacceptable for them not to accept it.
But I guess the question is, I personally wouldn't call that a secular calendar. Like, I would say I personally really celebrate the Boston school system calendar, or the Westford school system calendar, because it's not secular, it's educational. It's educating teachers who come from different traditions, like, oh wow, this student, this is going to be a really important day in his life tomorrow, and I know something's going on, and it makes them thoughtful and conscious that people are different. When you take away the knowledge of that, it's kind of hiding it under the table. So I'm really not a proponent to hide those things. I'd like to see them all on the calendar, and really to celebrate our diversity and to educate people about that. I hope that.
But how do we do that and not stop the process? This is the problem we're running into. If we're going to recognize more and more holy days, and that's the way I distinguish federal holidays or state holidays from religious holidays. If we are recognizing more and more, do we have homework holidays with every one of those?
I think that there's compromises around that. I mean, like I said, we could learn from the way Westford addresses it. I know that they have kind of a morphed policy between the Boston and the Chelmsford policy, where all the dates are on the calendar, but kids still have to write the notes from all traditions, including if they want to be out for Good Friday. Right. So, but they don't have to go to, if they're in high school, every single teacher. The other thing is, in the middle school, if you miss a test, you can't make it up during the day. There's no free periods. So does that mean they're penalized and have to stay before school or after school for a test? And what if their parents both work? I mean, so there is, especially my understanding is in the middle school years, a problem with not having the ability to make up tests easily if they miss a test on a day. I know there are other people that want to speak, so I don't want to dominate this, but I know other members of the congregation are here also with some other perspectives. But thank you very much. And I am happy to come and meet with you. Oh, go ahead. Hi.
So Rabbi, tell me one more time, slowly, tell me your solution. I want to understand it very clearly.
Okay.
What would you suggest?
First of all, I want to say my solution may not be the same as every
fair enough.
members of my congregation.
You're up here,
Okay.
you have one vote, one voice.
One vote. I have members who are teachers in the high school that deal with it from their perspective. I have members who are, parents here that have perspectives. I don't think it's one thing, because what I do know is what I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be what it was, which is no holidays on the calendar listed, and that parents have to write notes to excuse their kids, and those kids need to make it up, and still allow holidays like Good Friday to be off, and then no expectation of trying to train teachers in diversity, or really communicating to parents about what happens when their kids, for instance, what does the school system do to train teachers about understanding?
Rabbi, let me push. I want to push you a little bit.
I would encourage you to look at the Westford policy.
Okay, that's an answer.
Perhaps.
Because you said Westford, then you said
Westford and
Boston.
Boston, they're very similar. Those are my two perspective ones that I think,
That are acceptable in your opinion?
if my kid was in that school system, I would feel that was more acceptable. But I still like what Westford does. But I don't think a completely approach with no mention of it works.
Just asking your
They
opinion.
have what we have, which are homework holidays. Do they have that in Boston and Westford?
They have the ability for kids not to get homework or tests on those days as excused absences, but it's also sensitizing the teachers to know that many kids might be out, and maybe they shouldn't schedule those things because those things are going to be on the calendar. And also, they would never have things like photo days. The principals would make sure there'd be no photo days, no open houses, no things like, I don't know if you know this, but many times this high school has had scheduled Yom Kippur football games on the same nights that Yom Kippur is. We've had vandalism of the synagogue, of cars on the road because of that. There's no parking then. It's dangerous. If it's on the calendar, then the athletic directors know what's happening. If you take it away, they're not going to be looking for those dates. They're not going to be, because they haven't in the past.
Right.
But I don't know if this is the moment to problem solve in detail.
I just wanted to hear your opinion.
I think that's the issue, to get some families together from the Jewish tradition, from the Christian faith, the Muslim faith, get a task force together to sit down at a round table and talk about it together.
I'd love to.
So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Hi, I'm Kayla McGuire. I live at 18 Hornbeam Hill Road, and I wanted to also address the proposed changes to the calendar, but I wanted to talk about it from an implementation perspective. As a Jewish parent in Chelmsford, I've struggled with my children's teachers accepting the fact that we currently have a no homework, no test policy on the calendar. So regardless of whether we implement the Westford policy and something similar to the Boston policy, both of which I find to be well implemented policies, and would encourage people to look at those policies, or if we stay with what we have with adding additional holy days to the calendar and having a no test and a no test and no homework policy, I question our continued ability to implement. I do write the letter to self-identify that my children will not be in school on the Jewish high holidays. I send an email reminder in advance the day before so that the teachers know, and yet still My children come home from school the day after they have returned with homework and makeup work and a rescheduled makeup test and a rescheduled quiz. I have needed to work with various school principals to reschedule photo day and to reschedule all school assemblies, because the policy as it is currently written says that there won't be any large school or all-inclusive, I don't remember the exact language of it, all-inclusive or large school activities on the no test, no homework days, but yet I am constantly struggling against the system. So however it is that we choose to implement a policy to protect the children of all faith, including those that celebrate Good Friday and other Christian holidays when you need to miss school, we need to be sensitive to the fact that not all teachers embrace whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. Because despite self-identification and a current in-place, in-force school calendar, my children have struggled. And as a parent, it is very difficult to explain year after year after year, well, I thought you talked to them about this last year, Mom. How come we're having the problem again? So I would encourage increased diversity training, increased acceptance of the policies, and certainly not having teachers call out the children. As the rabbi spoke about, there are children who are impacted by comments that teachers make in classrooms, and it's hard for the kid to, the next holiday, want to stand up and self-identify for fear of recrimination. So whatever it is that as a town we decide to implement, we should think about how are we going to implement and how are we going to recognize that not everybody embraces any kind of religious policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle Evans. I currently have one child in the 3rd grade here at South Row. I had one child finish up here at South Row, and I chose to move that child to the charter school. And I've been a town meeting rep for almost 10 years in Chelmsford. I moved here for many reasons, but I love this town. But I made the decision to do, on many levels, to do what was best for my family and my child by moving my son first to the charter school. We're really happy there. We're extremely happy there. And there are many reasons why, and there are many things I could go into. But when it becomes to this issue, I want to just give you a picture of something. My child here, in all his years at South Row, and while this is a fantastic school that I love, never felt comfortable being, one of the minority Jewish students. He never felt comfortable. We struggled here at the elementary level. He had children say things to him about being Jewish that were hurtful and were mean. I had teachers that I struggled with on that level, and I personally, as a parent, struggled with when things, even besides the academics, were scheduled. And that is a really hard, difficult thing for your child. And it's a hard, difficult thing as a parent to watch that and to go through. Now, I can tell you, it is like the light opened up for us at the charter school. The culture is amazingly different. It is a much more respectful, accepting place. The teachers have been, they bend over backwards to make sure that not only my child, who's Jewish, but there's all the other children from all the religions feel comfortable and safe and welcomed. And when my child had to take off 2 days for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, his teachers were phenomenal. And this is in a school which started this year that they took away the no homework, no test policy. So my son had a good, he definitely had homework to make up, and things to make up, and especially in a charter environment, if you're out, you're really missing things in the classroom. There's certain things that are hard to make up. But I had teachers who, spent the time staying after school with him and spent the time really working with him to make sure that he was not penalized in any way. But the most important thing of that is that the culture and the environment never made him feel bad and never made him feel singled out. And that was the first time as a student that he has felt that way, that last year and this year. And he has come to me and talked about that and pointed that out and said how much more respected he feels and how much better it is. And in one sense, I'm happy as a parent that that's where he is now, and it's easier for me and for my family. But I'll tell you, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that in the year 2016, this school system in a town that I love has not come as far as we need to. And I talk to members of my congregation. I have talked to the teenagers and the now college students in my congregation. I heard stories that are just frightening. And I know what the environments are like at the middle and high school level. And there's a lot of good going on at those levels, and there are a lot of unbelievably good staff, but something more needs to be done. And the culture needs to change. And whether we take Westford's policy, we look at Boston, or no matter what we do in this, personally, I think Westford has a good policy. And I looked at their calendar today, and I would suggest you all go and look at their calendar, look at their policy, and go talk to their superintendent, talk to their school committee, and really explore this. Do your due diligence on this, and really talk to all the faith communities in town, and really think about this in a thoughtful way. But there is no reason in 2016 that families and students in this town who are in minority religious faiths have to feel anything but comfortable in being able to celebrate their holidays, and especially their high holy days. The other piece I would say around the issue of Good Friday. Westford is a regular school day on Good Friday. Many towns are. And I also think to have Good Friday off from school and not to have is unfair to your teachers, and it's unfair to your staff, because a teacher who is Christian or Catholic has that Good Friday off. That's, they don't have to worry about their sub or their, lesson plan or anything, and they just get that. But a teacher who is of the Jewish faith or Muslim faith or Hindu or whatever other religion, if they want to be able to take their high holiday off from school and go observe it as they should, they have to use it as a sick day or a vacation day, have to work on subs and lesson plans. And at least if Good Friday was a regular school day and then teachers were given an added personal day, and that's like their holiday to use whenever during the school year their personal religious holiday falls for what they want to use it for, then at least that is an equal, fair system for teachers and for staff. And I think we have to remember we have a diverse staff, and we have to do what's equal and good and right by them, as well as our families and as well as our students. And I would just strongly encourage Superintendent Lang and the school committee to really give this a strong, hard look and not make a quick, fast decision that is also so far just based on a survey that, quite frankly, I had no idea what you were talking about. And I can tell you that it alarmed me, and it alarmed me greatly given what I have gone through so far in this community. That was not done well. And certainly as a school district, we're a lot better than what that survey showed it to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Valerie Rosen. I live at 3 Holly Drive. I don't know where the homework policy should go. I just wanted to make a few comments about the culture in the schools. I've had some very positive experiences with the schools. I've had negative experiences with the school. I have a first grader and a third grader, so it's not very long to have those experiences within the school district. I was appalled to learn that, and I only learned this over the last 2 weeks, that the homework policy only included Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and not Diwali and not Eid al-Fitr. I realized Diwali this year was Veterans Day, so it was a day off, which was great for those families. My son's third grade teacher had scheduled a quiz for the next day, and someone sent her an email. I'm ashamed to say it wasn't me, but someone sent her an email, and she moved it because there were students in that class who were going to be coming back from their holy day. On the other hand, I had a teacher at open school night in front of all the parents complain that, she couldn't understand how she was supposed to teach these kids anything and how these kids were going to learn anything if she couldn't give homework on the Jewish holidays. I figured I could take a little nonsense if she kept it away from my kid, but it was still not something I felt very comfortable hearing in my second year of the district. First graders are first graders, and all the first graders want to talk about is Santa, Santa, Santa. And my first grader, who was in his first year in this district because we did kindergarten in another town, was just really upset. And he handled it amazingly appropriately. And he tugged his teacher by the sleeve and he said, I need to talk to you. And she wanted to know what was wrong. I was like, I need to talk to you in the hall. Because he didn't want to talk about Santa in the classroom because my first grader knows. And so he didn't want to say anything in front of his friends. And so I got a call that afternoon from the teacher. And I had sent in a couple of Hanukkah books, for her to read to the kids. And she told me very gently that I should come in and read some books to the kids. And it took me a while because I'm sort of slow on the uptake, that what she really meant was this was a command performance. And that so my kid would be more comfortable with his friends, I really needed to come in and read those books. And I read a couple of the books to the kids and they ate it right up. One of the books I read, which the teacher had already read to the class book, but they were perfectly happy to hear again, first graders are into repetition. It's called The Only One Club. It's about a girl named Jennifer Jester. She's the only kid in her class who's Jewish. I totally sympathize with this. I'm an army brat. I've been the only kid in the class. I've been the only kid in the school. I've been one of two families in the town. And in this book, we learn every kid is the only one of something. Some kids are tall, some kids are short, some kids have freckles, every kid is the only one of something. So whatever you do with this policy, I would encourage you to work with the teachers, work with the staff, work with the students, honestly. I know it's hard to work with students. Students are students. To realize that every kid is the only one of something, and every kid is deserving of respect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Epstein. You want it down? Going down. 4 Highgate Road in Chelmsford. I feel a little bit like the voice of Christmas past because my son is a senior this year. And yes, he's already been accepted multiple places. Yay. But I will say that anti-Semitism with him, he was at South Row, started in 3rd or 4th grade on the bus when he was told it's too bad Hitler didn't complete his job, and proceeded on through 9th grade, off and on, when he received an email that was again anti-Semitic, and at that point we did call the police. It was the August before he began 9th grade. It was a twisted tale, but the police did get down to which incoming 9th graders were probably or were responsible for that email, and everybody got a trip to the police station with their parents. However, one of the things that came out is I said to the police, now the school system has known about these incidents. They've talked with the students who were the perpetrators, and I got a call back from the police and was told the school system doesn't have anything about this. So I felt like it was a real kick in the stomach for us as a family that our school system did not have our back. And at that point, I pulled one of my emergency levers, which was the Anti-Defamation League, and they escorted my husband and I when we went to see the new principal, Charlie Caleri, to discuss that this was inappropriate, that my son was starting high school, and that we wanted certain precautions taken so that he would not be in the same class as the students who had perpetrated this email. And that was all worked out, but, I really shouldn't be having to threaten lawsuits or, potential legal actions. my school system should be there. And all of these parents who've talked, they should feel that the school system is there and backing this up and documenting when these happen and not play hide and seek on us when we reach something that is, just about at a criminal or misdemeanor level. As recently as last year, my son had an English class, and he was expected to say, to have a metaphor for what happened to the main character in the book when a metal ring was placed on his head just prior to electroconvulsive therapy being done to this main character. And he was supposed to realize that it was just like Jesus Christ having a crown of thorns put on his head with the torture that would be perpetrated on his body. And my son had no context for doing that. He did approach the teacher about it, and the teacher said, "I'll think about it." And he said, "No, I'm going to still not give you credit for that response." And I said, "Do you want me to challenge this?" And he said, "No, it's not worth it." So I think you need to realize that these things are still happening. From my perspective with a high schooler, it's still the situation that when they take time off, they have to go to 5 different teachers or the teachers for the day because it's a, 8 course schedule that rotates and they have 5 a day. They have to contact those individually. My son does, because of how he does his work, have email relationships with all of his teachers because he typically hands his work in via email since he does almost all of his work on his computer. So it's a little bit easier, but still the physically having to go to every teacher during the plus block is really, I like the idea of just sending the letter to the guidance counselor or to having someone in the house office who handles it in the high school, and being able to obtain by email or however the student converses with the teacher what the makeup homework is or that type of thing. Okay, and I totally agree with no tests, quizzes, non-repeatable labs, photo days and field trips. And that's the way it's typically, supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Hannah Barker from 10 Newtown Way. I just had a couple of different things. One is for the voting days at McCarthy Middle School, I wanted to suggest that perhaps the students at McCarthy can be excused on those days. I think it couldn't be argued that the students and staff would be safer if they were not at school that day, although I realize it probably creates problems with, what do you do with your kids if they don't have school that day? But that's something I'd like to ask be considered, and if not, if students are not in attendance that day, it would be an excused absence. The second thought I had was regarding information that's provided to kids. I've only had kids in elementary and middle school so far, but regarding how to dress, and I think it is something to consider to drop the gender specific. If you're going to wear pants, there can be guidelines for what type of pants are expected. If you're going to wear a dress, there can be guidelines for what types of dresses are expected, and that kids will tend to self-select into the appropriate category without specifying what gender you have to be to go along with those. So that's just another suggestion. And from listening to everybody else, I would also support some diversity training, because that just can't hurt.
I assume that the gender neutral would apply to concerts and choral,
Proms,
that where the girls have to
orchestra.
wear a black skirt and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I would take it
Yeah.
one step further to the graduation gowns. I would do away with those white gowns. Everyone wears maroon, but that's my own.
Yeah, I haven't investigated that much, but I mean, I think at the college level, everybody wears the same thing. It's only designated by the types of degree you're receiving. You're a graduate, doesn't matter what sex you are underneath the gown. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. In just a moment, we'll resume with our regular meeting.
There's supposed to be one here behind you.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll go out to eat and have a good time.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We'll do them separately. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 15th.
Move to approve the minutes of December 15th, 2015.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Vote now, please. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, second.
Move to approve the minutes of the Policy Subcommittee meeting of December 17th, 2015.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye. Aye.
Move
Any
to,
opposition? Oh, just give them a chance. Okay.
move to approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of January 5th, 2016.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? None.
Move to approve the minutes of the Policy Subcommittee meeting of January 5th, 2016.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposition? None. Okay, we're now under public comment. Yep.
Hi, my name's Todd Melanson. I'm the Environmental Compliance Manager with the Chelmsford Water District. Just want to recognize I have two of the water commissioners of the Chelmsford Water District, John Harrington and Bill Martin. Bill Martin's the chairman. My purpose in being here is kind of introduce myself to the committee and Dr. Lang, the district, so to speak, and then go over a couple of concerns we had going forward. One is the district, we're a separate municipal entity from the town. Our sole concern is water, and everything that we operate is off of our water rates. But we do operate as a municipal government. Water district, Chelmsford Water District supplies about 80% of the water to the town and to every school except the high school and to the Harrington. To the Harrington. We supply the domestic supply to all the other schools, and we supply the fire protection to the high school. We also supply water to basically every municipal building without cost. It is metered and accounted for, but it was a decision that the commissioners have made going forward that we do not charge the town the cost of the water. The water district has built and continues to build on a working partnership with the school district. We do a school outreach program. I've spoken both at the Parker and McCarthy Middle Schools. I've worked with the AP program at the high school, Mrs. Kender, and we've done some really good programs there. We do work with the schools on water conservation and accounting for the water. That have been some issues going forward. Our concerns going forward has to do with your custodians. And any plan that you come forward, we really wanted these two topics to be highlighted. One is the hydrants. The Chelmsford Water District is responsible for every hydrant along the road inside the district. That number is some odd 1,500. Any hydrants off the road on other properties are that people's responsibility. That kind of got lost with the extreme weather conditions of last year. It really got highlighted. And so when you go forward, that would be one thing that we wanted to make sure that you're aware of. The other is we really hope to have a point of contact with whatever you shape to be your custodial program. We had different communication issues in the past. To give you an idea, every month all your meters are read. They are reviewed for water loss and leaks and things like that, and then it's gone on and fixed. The coordination, once we find a problem to get to the solution part of it, has at times been difficult. And so those are the two things we really wanted highlighted, that the hydrants on your properties are your responsibility, and it is something you need to be aware of. and that the water conservation and communication with the custodians, we really need a point of contact directly with either, whether it's through facilities or whatever, but we need a definite point of contact so that if we identify a problem, it's easily fixed. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Dr. Lang. Thank you.
Any questions?
No, I had an opportunity to talk on the phone last week to review your concerns, and as we're putting together the RFP that's going to go out in about another 2 weeks or so, those are certainly concerns that I'll highlight, and I'll make sure that it's clear this time around. There was some vagueness in certain areas in the last RFP, and that's why it's really important that we get it kind of crystal clear with what the expectations are and whose roles and responsibilities different aspects of the contract are, so that there's no misunderstandings as we move forward. So I appreciated you reaching out to me, and we'll certainly incorporate both of those suggestions into the RFP to make sure moving forward we have that better communication. And as always, if anything comes up, you feel free to contact me or reach out to me, and I'm happy to work with you. So thank you.
Do we have any good news tonight?
We have both good news, and I have the update for CHS for our student reps. So I'll start with the update first. So this weekend, CHS's one and only Capella group, the Thursdays, is competing in Any Voices. Any Voices is a 2-day comprehensive festival for our high school students and ensembles with their teachers. So they're very excited to be doing that this weekend. This is the first semester is coming for a close at CHS. That's why our student reps are not here. They're all home studying for their exams, and that should be finished up this week. On January 8th, CHS conducted College Reverse Day, where recent alumni came back to CHS to talk to students about their college experience so far. Their advice was very helpful for the current seniors. And Chelmsford High School is pleased to present their annual student-written children's play called Imagine, Inc. It's written by seniors Allison Blair and Grace Looper and directed by Gabby Hugler. The story brings back childhood memories as it takes you on a journey of invisible friends of childhood. So the show dates are February 4th and February 5th, starting at 6:30 and 7 p.m., and then Saturday, February 6th at 2 p.m. in the Carl Rondina Performing Arts Center. One other shout out that the students wanted to give was to Claire Markey. She's a senior that's on the varsity basketball team. She made her 1,000th point in her CHS career, so that was celebrated at the varsity basketball game. One other announcement that I would like to make to CHS is that on February 11th, we'll announce it again, will be the parent information night for any students going from 8th grade to 9th grade. It will start off in the Performing Arts Center, and then there will be both guided and self-guided tours, as well as ability to talk to curriculum directors and to also talk with faculty and staff at CHS, so February 11th. Moving on to the middle schools, McCarthy Middle School has Penny for Patients that they'll be working on. All the money goes to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Parker Middle School, they're saying with 100% participation, 800 pieces of item could be donated for the Chelmsford Community Exchange. So they'll be doing that. They'll be doing their collection from February 1st to February 5th, which is great. They are looking for some specific items such as low sodium soup, sugar-free jam, sugar-free spaghetti sauce, sugar-free Jell-O and pudding, still continuing on with the sugar-free, salt-free canned vegetables, diapers, shampoo, and soaps. So check the items that you're donating, and if you can earmark some of those items, that would be great. And last but not least is our children at the Harrington Elementary School. Tomorrow will be celebrating their Heritage Festival projects. So they're really looking forward to that, and it should be a pretty exciting evening. And that's it.
Very good. I'd like to invite Mr. Simonian and Chi to come up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us here. As Al mentioned, Terry Mashihi is with me. He's the president of the association, class of 1964. Well, I have good news. I'd like to read them to you. The Chelmsford High School Alumni Association proudly announces its 26th annual Hall of Fame induction. The ceremony will take place on the evening of the 19th of March, 2016 at the Radisson Hotel up in Nashua. The program will include a social at 5:45, dinner at 6:30, and the induction at 7. Those being inducted are as follows: Bruce Byam, class of 1963, Megan Curran, class of 2005, Jeffrey Doherty, Dean, Alan Hanson, class of 1987, Raymond Hardy, class of 1951, Harriet Connett, coach, James Lane Jr., class of 1983, Kevin F. McCarthy, class of 1987, Anne Marie Rourke, class of 1972. For information relative to the purchase of tickets for the induction ceremony, you can call either Terry at 978-251-3788 or me at 978-256-3100. Now, I know a lot of you have come to these affairs in the past. We have two Hall of Famers sitting right here at the table, Mr. Sal Napoli and Mr. Al Thomas. They're part of the group. And any questions?
How much are your tickets?
50, same as before. And I'll reserve a table for the school committee. Can I?
I'll tell you what,
Good.
it's an unbelievable...
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. So it's going to be a great night. And this is nine again, 9 more great people.
You know, Mrs. Simonian, I have to commend you every time I go. It's an unbelievable experience. Last year was an unbelievable event you had, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And if anybody's listening out there, you should take the time to buy a ticket and go. You'll have a great time.
Yeah. And last year was our 25th, and it was a sellout. We had to really tell people there were no more tickets. So that's good news too.
I'm sure if somebody wanted to buy a ticket, you would have found us.
Well, I'll find a place for them someplace. Good.
Thanks again, George.
Thank you. Question? Oh, here's 2 tickets right now.
As usual. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you. The second item on the agenda this evening is the results of the parent survey that was issued earlier this month regarding the 2016-17 school calendar as related to religious holidays. I'd ask Assistant Superintendent Hirsch, who compiled all the information, to maybe just walk through the results and some of the key themes through the various questions with the committee members, and then have a discussion about how you'd like to proceed.
So in your memo, you saw that there were 869 participants of the survey. What happened was teachers and parents and community members could click on their response with yes, no, and then leave a comment in the comment boxes. What happens with comments is they are then coded for reoccurring themes based on phrases and words, so that work was done. And if you take a look at the actual results, the confusion, I think, with the survey came with question number 2, when the word all was removed, because then it looked like it mirrored some of the other 2 questions that were happening. But if you take a look at question 1, there were 842 responders with 76% clicking yes for should the committee maintain the current policy, with 23% saying that there should be no change. A lot of the themes you'll see the same for all 3 questions. A lot was around religious, being respectful for religious holidays. Sometimes the holidays make it difficult for teachers. Not all students observe and complete the homework and so on. So there was very many reoccurring themes. If you moved on to question 2, there was still a good amount of responders, but I think we had less responders because they weren't sure what the question was asking. There were 808 responders with 53% saying yes and 46 no. The reoccurring theme was the question was difficult and they couldn't answer the question. So that does invalidate what's happening with that question. And then lastly, in question 3, there were 827 responders, with 21% saying that should the committee amend the policy, 21% said yes, where 78 said no. So basically leave it alone is the reoccurring theme that happens there. And again, you'd see that make sure you're respectful of holidays, please be inclusive of most holidays. That's where a lot of the comments were generated.
So, given the findings and the discussion tonight, I'm not sure what the committee would like to do at this point. I don't know if it. This has been kind of quick, so we had the public comments tonight. We haven't really had a chance to look at any of the policies that were even referenced this evening. I don't know if you'd like me to go back and actually try to collect the Boston, I think the Westford policy that was mentioned, and perhaps we could have either a subcommittee, or I could just bring them forward to the committee for discussion and possibly take action, at the next meeting. I don't know how you feel, but I wanted to throw that out there.
I'd like to take Rabbi Perry's suggestion and get together some kind of a committee, just volunteers from the community to discuss, whether or not, I think the thing that I'm getting is they want a calendar that's in front of the teachers that says, this is coming up. I didn't get the feeling, and this is my concern, that's homework holiday. That's a problem. And I didn't feel like that they were bound to the homework holiday, and I would like to just pursue that with a diversity committee, and maybe their concerns that the teachers need to have some kind of training, so I think we need to have a little more discussion on it.
Yeah, we had a meeting, I think it was maybe 6 years ago, with Rabbi Perry and a number of other members of the religious community, and had a discussion like that. That's how we came up with the current policy, was because they thought that would be the best way of dealing with any kind of discrimination. Having another discussion is always useful. There may be some new people, there may be some different ideas, they may have a different perspective. The subcommittee can certainly do some more research and find out the different policies. We can certainly include that in a packet if we have any recommendations. But I think this all started just because we wanted to know what to put on the calendar, because it's the time of year to vote for the calendar. And because that policy happens to be linked to the calendar and the calendar to the policy, that's why the policy came back on the table. It wasn't that there was an actual, a proactive approach to single out the policy and to change the policy. It came as a result of the calendar. So taking a look at Westford's calendar, Boston's calendar, I know Mike has brought up Boston a number of times over the years about that. I'm not necessarily in favor of changing that policy unless there is an agreement within the community, because it does impact them directly. So I think it's something that, will be ongoing, and currently we just need teachers to understand what that means. And so if there are issues within the staff members, then that would be at the administration level in order to address that. The policy has been given to them, or they're signed off in their policy, just like they're signed off on other policies. I don't know if that's still current practice, but they used to, the superintendent would send out the policy, everybody acknowledged receiving it and reading it, so that they knew what it meant. And if there were any questions, maybe we should ask them if they have any questions about how to implement the policy, if there seems to be some differences of opinion on how to implement it.
It's interesting, Westford identifies, justification for a student absence for a holy holiday, but they also require 2 weeks' notice, which I don't know that they were aware of that. So that's interesting, I think. I just think that we need to discuss it. I think we also need a broader group to discuss it. We had the Diwali group of people talking about Diwali last year, students.
Yeah.
Let's have some of them come in and meet with us as well, as part of all of this.
Would you want me to pull together some of those policies and maybe schedule like a working session where we could just have that be the one? It is a big enough issue where perhaps the whole school committee should be involved instead of just a subcommittee to talk it through. But we could post a public working session about this particular policy, invite the members from the different clergy in to do that, and perhaps scheduling wise, if we were able to give people enough notice, maybe that week right after February vacation, we could have an evening to review that.
I think it's good to have everybody on the same page and have all the information coming at them.
My only question about that would be, is that something you should do, or should there be a subcommittee of the school committee to kind of pull those things together and take it off of your plate? I think you're entering a very busy time of year. You have plenty of things to do. At this point, I've seen nothing, not in the survey and not in the public comments, either the ones here tonight or the various emails that I've received, that would lead me to think that we need to change the policy. So at least at this point, we're okay taking a little bit of time to work it out. It's clearly not going to change for this school year. To the extent that we've already set the calendar for next year, we've identified the the religious holidays that we're going to identify, I suppose we could adjust that if we had from people. But I think maybe at least the initial organizational work could be done by a subcommittee rather than making it the responsibility of the superintendent's office.
Can I push back on that a little bit, Michael? Is this, me personally, I'm always going to look to push it to the person that's going to make the ultimate, be part of that decision-making process. You're going to do some homework. Is this something, Dr. Lang, that you feel you could do, or do you agree with Michael that it might be a little bit too much, or is this something you could easily embrace and get the information to you as fast as possible, so you could, because you're with the teachers, you're very close to this naturally, whereas if we put a subcommittee together, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think the big thing is, it wouldn't be too time consuming just to, if we're only talking Westford and Boston, just to go online and get the policies. That's not a big deal. I just think it's a policy, it's the school committee's policy, and obviously I want to have an input into it because whatever gets decided, I'll have to implement with staff. Physically, just getting the policies and even, working with, say, Debbie to convene the meeting of the larger group, I don't have a problem with that. That's not any real heavy lifting. As far as kind of sifting through the policy to figure out what kind of change you want, I think that needs to be the broader discussion of the whole group. But I don't have a problem just pulling the information together. That's not a heavy lift for me, if you want, and that's helpful.
I like your idea of having a work session with the public invited. Then we don't have to really identify, just send it out. Come if you're interested. If you're not, watch it from home.
I agree, Barbara. I agree with you, Dr. Lang.
Would that be okay? Timeline-wise, I think the only question we've really received at the office is more about the calendar and the start day for school for vacation planning. As far as what days ultimately. I hope that's not a sign. What days ultimately go on the calendar or not is something that we can determine at a later date. But if we tried to work a date out for that, the week right after February vacation, would that work for, Evelyn, are you away that week?
I'm away that week.
All right, when do you get back?
I think I get back on the Thursday or the Friday. It would be you'd have to go into March.
Would the first week in March be better?
Yeah, or the last day in
Would that be okay with the group?
March.
First week in March?
That's great.
Okay, and that'll give you plenty of time to pull it together. I'll download the policies and I'll actually put them in the Dropbox for you so that you can all have access to them and take a peek at them ahead of time, and then we can work on getting an invitation out.
I'll also check to see if I have any of them.
Okay.
Al, is that a recommendation, or is that just,
Sure.
do we need a recommendation, or?
I think we're okay.
Good.
Does that work?
That's good. Good.
Okay, item number 3, I'm going to ask to please be deferred to the next meeting in February, as I emailed you. I'm just still in the process, and I really want to get it right and not have any kind of issues around clarity or understanding with regard to the approval to issue the RFP for custodial services. So I'd ask that item be actually just pushed to the February 9th meeting, and I'll supply you the draft RFP mid next week, so you have the full weekend to review it. I don't fear it's fair to ask you to approve it without having sufficient time to review. So could we move item number 3 without issue to February 9th, please?
It's fine.
Okay. So we'll go on to item 4, and actually Michelle will give us a year-to-date budget report and update for fiscal 16.
In your packet, I have included the reports for the quarter ending December 31st. You will find a Munis printout for the general fund operating budget, which I'm not going to spend any time on because that actually also leads, it is the exact same information that is in the projection that I have on an Excel spreadsheet, and that's the one I'll be referring to. And just for informational purposes, you also have the second quarter report for the grant and revolving fund summary. I want to spend my time on the projection, which is the Excel spreadsheet of the general fund operating budget. At this point in the year, as of December 31st, we had spent a total of $21,069,000. We had encumbrances of $27,810,000. This includes all outstanding purchase orders and reserved salaries for teachers and administrators and anyone else who's on a salary basis. That will leave you to the total available funds of $4,019,000. I am estimating an additional required amount of $4.3 million, which is hourly employee costs and future costs, including expending all available expense accounts for teachers and for classroom and other expenses such as utilities and whatnot. And that would leave us with a shortfall of $280,000 approximately. Some of that shortfall we had intended to take from the school choice funds due to the superintendent's line being overexpended. And some of the other significant shortfalls are within the SPED budget, which can easily be covered by circuit breaker funds at this point. So while we are projecting a deficit of the $280,000, I do expect that we have sufficient funds to cover that at this point. You will notice, looking through the individual lines, that we do still have some large surpluses and deficits. Most of that has actually been cleaned up in January, and your next monthly report will be a lot cleaner. Just some of it is teachers that were budgeted at lower salaries, they were vacancies, and they were filled with higher paid teacher positions, which resulted in a $10,000, $20,000 shortfall in each individual line. But overall, some of our accounts do have surpluses, some of them have shortages. Overall, it all washes out, and we're looking at the bottom line of the $280,000 shortfall, which is not to be concerned about at this point in the year. That's the general funds. I also included the Excel spreadsheet on the grant and revolving fund, which basically gives you the current ending balances, which tie to Munis report, which I also included, and then the ending balance with additional estimated revenue that we expect at this point. If anyone has any questions on those reports, please let me know.
The line for substitutes, it looks like we're doing pretty good.
We are so far, yes, surprisingly well. We're very happy with that.
Do we have any numbers on fill rates for the subs?
Yeah, I can get you we can do like a 6-month kind of report to show you where we are. There were certainly some holes in the beginning of the year. September, October was we were getting started. You know, all in all, across the district, it's above, 90% per day. There was we had a meeting early this afternoon, and ironically, Byam, who we were talking about earlier, had an issue with a few fills in one of their autism classrooms for paraprofessional support. But it is actually at a pretty good level, and that is an account. In Michelle's projection, obviously all the non-personnel accounts have been projected to be fully expended, and there will be some accounts that have surpluses. That's why we're not that concerned about the shortfall at this point in time. But I do think there is some potential for savings there. As we're putting the budget together for next year, though, what we are able to do is actually go back and based on the ASOP, the request for subs, even take a look at the vacancies to project out what the actual total amount of the spend would have been if all of the positions were filled. So that'll be some analysis we'll be doing going forward as well. But that was pleasant to see. At least it does appear that we're on the right track with that.
I'd like to ask that with the better? Okay. I'd like to ask that with the February, perhaps it's with the February report, we will know the exact dollar figure of the cost of the superintendent settlement. And I'd like to ask that that number get brought forward, and that we also have a plan to explicitly transfer money from one or more line items. That superintendent account is over. Not only because of the settlement, but because we still have the old number there for the current superintendent salary, and that's a known thing. If we could just lock that down so that the deficit that we see, the projected deficit, is more directly attributable to the sped side of the ledger, just to kind of help focus our view on that and not be distracted by because the other overrun is something we know about, and it's done essentially by the end of the month. So if we could just lock that into place and kind of clear the decks, I would appreciate that.
I could surely do that, and I have been debating whether or not to do that. The only thing is, if we have large surpluses at the end of the year, I'd hate to use school choice funds if we don't need to offset those costs. So we can certainly segregate it, or we can certainly transfer it at this point.
I was just thinking along the same lines. My only concern would be, and it's nice to get that cleaned up,
Right.
but we will develop other surpluses in other accounts as the year goes on. And I hate to see it transferred, to school choice to fill the void, and then a transfer later to basically
Have to transfer it back, you're saying?
You'd have to transfer it back to basically, because you'd want the money to go into, say, like a school choice or
Yeah,
a
right.
fund
Something that's
breaker
more.
that you can carry it over to. That would be my only hesitation, or as long as the committee is aware that you could do a transfer in, transfer out type situation, and just have to be able to explain that. It's just not as clean as one transfer, but I understand what you're getting at, and I can see that. We were just trying to isolate, because that number does jump out at you on the sheet. We were just trying to isolate that cost.
I just have a question on transfers. Are you done?
I guess,
Okay. The last time that we had a report, or your quarterly report, we did make a motion in which to approve the transfers?
Yes.
Okay, so that is included in this, and this number that's under transfers are new ones.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a motion to approve that, or are you waiting to do
Not
that?
at this point. The only other transfers I have done were allowable between function codes. At next meeting, or the meeting within the next month, I will definitely have a list of potential transfers for you
Okay.
to make to finish cleaning them up at this point.
Just for a sec, back to Mike's point, do you have a feeling one way or the other how you want to handle that? It's, I don't know what the consensus is. It's not going to really get me one way or the other.
I'm happy to listen to others. I think you make a good point about maintaining flexibility. My first thought is that at least we could lock in the difference in the superintendent contract versus the projection. That should be a small enough number that
You can do
that
that,
we
and
can
that
take
would-
that out of. We can take that out, and then you can. And again, by doing that, it helps focus your attention on the number itself. And so then, looking at it down the road, a month from now, 2 months from now, it will be clear that the excess there, the excess expenditure there, is due strictly to the settlement.
If you want to do that, that actually would be clean, and then that negative that's still hanging out there would be directly attributed to that, and then that could be.
And then the plan would be to do a transfer at the end of the year.
Or at the end of the year, and just do one big
Right.
cleanup. All right, we can bring that forward at the next meeting.
You don't need a motion on that, do you?
No, we'll just bring it, you'll make a motion, you'll do a roll call vote at the next meeting.
Sounds great.
Nice job, Michelle. Very nice, as usual.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Linda? We're not there yet, but just when we get there. Okay, moving on to, so no other questions on 16? Okay. Wanted to have a discussion with you just as we're starting to work on the FY17 budget and provide you with some data tonight, just general kind of terms and where we are and where I see us going. The next day or two is actually going to be very interesting for us. Tomorrow the governor's budget will come out, probably late morning, early afternoon, and we'll be able to see exactly what they're projecting for unrestricted local aid increases. We know the percentage. We'll be able to see exactly what they have done with Chapter 70. I don't anticipate any huge increases in Chapter 70 based on the formula, but what is important to us is actually to see some of the other numbers that'll come across in the cherry sheet as far as, what is the, the charter school tuition, what is the reimbursement. So a lot of those will all factor in. And then I do believe, in talking to Paul, the town manager, tomorrow night at the tri-board meeting, he'll kind of present his first pass at those numbers and exactly how that's going to impact us. We're trying to finalize a couple of things for budget and then plan on actually at the next meeting on February 9th, presenting you with a formal preliminary budget book, but gave you a little sheet to kind of walk through tonight and just wanted to set up some of the information for you so that you would have it fresh at your hand. To provide some context for the operating budget, one of the things in talking to Mike as well, to kind of frame for the community exactly, where Chelmsford is as far as its spending and how we compare to other districts. I did some research and have put together some figures for you. Please stop me if I end up talking too technical or on the financial end I'm using terms that you don't think that the public will get, because I will certainly try to refocus us. But I want to give you some comparison. Linda, if you can hit the first slide. One of the things that obviously districts are really compared to is how much money you spend on education with regard to net school spending. So the DOE on each year actually publishes what required net school spending is. So how much money a community is supposed to contribute towards its educational program. And across the state, the last published actual data is for fiscal 14. So those are the last reports that have actually been publicized. All of the reports for all communities in the district, in the state, have been audited. These are the numbers that they actually go with. The FY15 figures, if you happen to go to the DOE website, would all have a little asterisk next to them because they're based on budget. And we've submitted our 15 numbers, and every community has as well, but they all haven't been audited, so the state hasn't actually produced final numbers on that. So some of this information I'll present tonight is based on fiscal 14 data. Now, as you know, in the state, everyone is supposed to hit what they call a minimum net school spending. And this is a calculation that the state does to provide what they term an adequate education. So if every community, based on what they receive in Chapter 70 and what they spend on their local cash contribution, as well as extra services that the city or town might provide that they get credit for, all goes into play to see how much you're actually spending on education. Now, across the state, based on 2014 data, there were actually 23 districts statewide that actually spent less than their required net school spending. So you can actually spend less than net school spending down to the 95% level and not be penalized. If you go below 95%, then you're technically penalized. If you spend anywhere between 95% and 100% of net school spending, any of that shortfall just carries over to the following year and is added to your net school spending calculation. Now, we're not in that predicament. So Chelmsford and most communities in the state exceed net school spending, which is good. Based on the fiscal 14 data, which is the final data, Chelmsford exceeded net school spending by 16.3%. So you spent 116.3, when I say you, we, spent 116.3% of net school spending. And that's good. I mean, it's good to be spending more than 100%. You want to exceed that minimum amount. You never want to fall below. But I do think it's also important to provide some context to that. And where does Chelmsford stand with regard to that net school spending? So across the state, all districts spent an average of 20.6% more than the net school spending minimum. So as you can see on the graph on the chart, Chelmsford actually had 148 communities, and I use the median value because it skews the number if you use the average value, because some of these budgets are so large. So if you use the median and actually just break down the communities and see where Chelmsford lands, there were 148 communities in the state that spent less than Chelmsford, and 176 communities that spent more than Chelmsford. Statewide. I think that's important to know context-wise, particularly when you're talking about investments in communities and how much money you're spending towards education, to get a sense for where you fall. Hopefully your spending is lining up with your achievement. And I have to say, and we'll talk about later, I think our achievement is actually outpacing our spending. So I do think there's an incredible kind of bang for the buck with regard to educational spending in Chelmsford. Again, statewide, Chelmsford came in at 16.3% for 14. The average statewide was 20.6%. And to give you some context as far as what that would mean dollar-wise for Chelmsford, if in 2014 we spent just at the state average, not above, not below, but the state average, that would have equated to another $2.14 million, just to have us be actually spending at that average amount of money. So I think that's a significant number again, and I think should have the community feel that the money that we are receiving is certainly being well spent when you look at the academic performance of our students in the state. And I think can obviously go towards an argument that we're certainly not spending too much money on education, and if anything, I think we should be moving towards that median and beyond, as opposed to regressing in any way. The second shot. Oh, you're there already? Okay, so the other thing that I think is very important to look at, so we looked at that state average. The DOE, and how are you going to actually compare yourself to other communities? The DOE a few years ago really wanted the public to be more involved and to be able to have more transparency in the numbers. And they created a DART tool. It's called the District Analysis and Review Tool. And you can go into this tool and actually identify your district, and then it goes through a system of figuring out what are the 10 most comparable districts in the state based on your demographic, your student enrollment, your size, your performance, and it actually then tells you who are your 10 districts that you're supposed to compare to. That's more important when you're looking at statewide trends than your neighboring communities, because there can be a lot of difference within a particular community, whether it's Chelmsford comparing to a Drake or a Lowell. There's a lot of difference there. You really want to see how you're performing against your peer communities across the state as far as comparable student enrollments. So on the DOE website, they give us the 10 districts that are most similar to Chelmsford, and you can see this displayed on the next slide, and they rise at the top from Wellesley all the way down to Franklin. And I've basically sorted this chart to give you a sense of our most comparable communities, where they're spending in excess of net school spending. So you can see actually only one community, Franklin, is spending less than Chelmsford is with regard to school spending. But they're at 8.5% above the 100% key, and we're at 16.3%. And then I also, on this chart, noted the state median, which we talked about earlier, 20.6%. And then the 7 communities actually ranging from, Acton, Boxborough, which happens to be a comparable community, but also is relatively close at 24.8, all the way to the high of Wellesley at 47. So there's always going to be discussion about what are your comparable communities, how realistic is Chelmsford compared to some of these others. But this is actually, kind of third-party data. This is the DOE using their analytic tools to figure out what are the districts that are most comparable in student enrollment, student performance, and using all these different factors. So I think this is actually more reliable data than just randomly picking 10 communities that are going to be similar to you. And I think, that looking at this chart actually says a lot. There's only one community in our comparable communities that's spending less on education than Chelmsford is. And, do I think, we should be at or will be at the high end? No. But I think certainly that's something that we need to look at and be conscious of when we're trending in that direction, or there's a need to potentially spend more on education. I want to at least have you have the facts and have you have the analysis. One of the other key, the next slide, one of the other key areas that oftentimes districts are compared to is student-teacher ratio. And this can, be somewhat of a misconstrued number when you just look at the DOE website. And again, you look at student-to-teacher ratio, and they are listing Chelmsford ratio for 15, because they do have all the student and staff information for 15. They just don't have the financials audited. But for 15, Chelmsford ends up with 14.1 to 1 student ratio. And taken out of context, that's great. I mean, who wouldn't want a 14 to 1 student ratio? But where this value is actually important is when you take into consideration, you've got to look at those like communities. And what this is basically doing is taking every student in your district and dividing it by any teacher in your district. So this is all your classroom teachers, all your special education teachers, all your allied art teachers, every licensed teacher in the district, regardless of what they're doing. The comparison the DOE takes is you take your total student population, you divide it by your total head count of licensed teachers, and you come up with that per pupil. So no one should walk away from this, or if there's ever a presentation that indicates our student-teacher ratio is 14.1. As you saw this evening with the buy-in third grade parents, they're having actual class size of 26, 27 in a classroom. The norm is more in the 20 to 24 range, but it's certainly not the 14.1. Where this value comes in, and actually, you know, I see some merit to it, is again, looking at your comparable districts, because every district is going to be somewhat skewed based on this formula. And you can see that there's actually 4 districts that have a higher student-to-staff ratio than we do, Easton, Needham, Natick, and Acton-Boxborough, and then there are 6 districts that have a better staff-to-student ratio than we do. And I think what's also key in this particular chart is the state average is also lower than Chelmsford. So the state average for all districts across the state is 13.1, and Chelmsford's 14.1. So even though we've seen a decline in student enrollment over the last number of years, 550 students, depending on the age band you look at. You know, schools, you know, it's never perfect where, you know, all the kids come out of a particular neighborhood or all a particular grade level where you can actually go and make a significant program change to account for that. What ends up happening is you have kind of a sprinkling effect. So there's a couple of kids at each grade level, there's a couple of kids at each school, and over time that cuts. But you never actually lose enough students at a particular grade level or a particular school to really cut a whole strand out. But again, I look at this particular piece of data as important in comparing, you know, across the board with our comparable communities, our class size with those other 10 as well as the state. And yes, we have experienced declines, but again, you know, the 6 communities in our comparable district as well as the state average is still better than we are. And you know, we would only be moving towards the bottom end of the list if that hadn't been the case. So that is the did you have a question? Oh, that's the significance of that particular table. The third table I wanted to take a look at, and this is something that you know, often is reported in, you know, the paper and articles, is your overall per pupil expenditures, and you know, how much money are you spending as an actual district on each student, whether they're in district or out of district. And if you look at the per pupil data, and again, this goes back to 2014, so June 30, 2014. That's the last year of the audited data as provided by the DOE. You can see actually that Chelmsford is third from the bottom of our comparable communities. Our overall, if you look at the far right-hand corner, the expenditure per pupil of $12,436. There were only 2 communities, Easton and Franklin, that actually spend less money per pupil than we do, and there were 8 communities that spend more. And again, interestingly, on this particular table is the state average, which I included at you know, $14,518 average per pupil. That's a little over $2,000 higher per pupil statewide that's being spent on each student, whether they're in district or out of district, than we're spending here. And again, I think this is valuable and important data to have as a community, as a school committee, to know that, you know, the allocation of the appropriation the town is giving is certainly, you know, welcomed, and we thank them for that. But I think there's a clear argument to be made that, you know, we're not spending too much on education, and if anything, the argument will be made if we want to be competitive with our peers and not be looking at providing just an adequate education, but a truly exceptional education, that you do have to pay for that, and you do have to provide the funding for that. So this, you know, that particular table was very telling to me. And you know, I'm looking at, you know, for the final budget book also, you know, some information I'll provide on you know, average staff salaries for these communities as well. But I at least wanted to give you a flavor of what we're looking at funding wise. Then we start to look at the FY17 budget and some of the drivers. Yeah. So if you look at this, and again, I think this just sets some perspective for both, you know, the current year, moving forward next year, but there are some numbers on this that are just, they're not going to change. They're never going to go down. And I think this is what the, you know, the district and the community really needs to be aware of. So in our budget each year, so as I start, and I always take a look at a budget, I start from developing a level service budget. So you take a look at the services and the programs you're providing in fiscal 16, and what is it going to cost to provide those same programs and services in 17 before you even start about talking about what kind of modifications or adjustments you want to make to that. What are your carrying costs from one year to the next? And you know, right out of the gate, The first thing that we have to contend with is just the contractual step increases. So across the district, in our existing contracts, before we even go to negotiate. So, teachers that move from step 2 to 3, administrators that move stepwise, paraprofessionals that move stepwise. Across our district, the cost of the step that's already included in the contract is $600,000. So that's a big number coming right out of the gate that, again, is not going to go down. And as we negotiate contracts and costs increase, that's a number that's only going to continue to rise. The next number that we contend with on an annual basis is what we call the lane changes. So when you look at a teacher salary scale, steps are going from year 2 to 3, 3 to 4, but the lanes are really when people advance educationally, and if you move from having a bachelor's degree to a master's degree, or a master's degree to a doctorate degree, whatever it end up may being. So the right moves to the right are what we term lane changes. So that's also a contractual benefit, and that's adding about $112,000 to our base. So right out of the gates, just our step and lanes are costing, close to $750,000, which is a big number. We also then have, not as big of a number, but it's a number that's included for the retirement buyback payment. So that's another $35,000 you have to put in. So out of the gate, we're looking at those particular costs, and those are basically just your carrying costs as you're starting to develop your budget. Then this also, fiscal 17 is going to be somewhat of a correction year for us because we need to go back and actually include into the base budget some of the special ed tuition increases that we realized in 16 that have to be carried over for 17. On a positive note, that number could actually be a lot higher, but we actually have a significant number of kids that are aging out of district placements this year, so that is positive. We have to make adjustments that we saw this year. Our transportation costs were also underfunded. When we had more kids that went to out-of-district placements, they also had to be transported. So there's a correction there on the tuition side of about $325,000. There's a correction on the transportation side of about $250,000. And then again, a small number, but we've had several students present in the district that require some additional assistive technologies, only to the tune of about $25,000. But these are all costs that weren't included in the 16 budget that have to be carried into the 17 budget. And then a number that we kind of baked into the budget for the start at least would be, what would the total cost of the custodial contracted services contract be if we actually, the worst case scenario, probably cost-wise, bring everyone back in district. So if we, we're going to go out to bid and we're going to look for the hybrid model. But I needed to have a number to compare that against, and I wanted to go with probably the worst-case scenario number, which would be all the salaries coming back on board in the school department. So when you take a look at the change of having all the day and the night and the supervisory salaries be in the district, as well as all the costs, then because we'd also be buying product and supplies, the floor cleaners and waxes, that's a $530,000 number. So that number is in the budget right now as far as what we're projecting. And, that's a number that I only see going lower, because if we ended up, going out to bid and the contracts came in much more than it would cost to just do it in-house, then that would have to be a serious discussion the committee would have to have. So that's the number that we put into the budget to work from. Linda? And then, again, some small items that, we're considering part of the level service budget. We had implemented the FOSS science kits at the elementary grade level this year. Want to continue that next year. These numbers are all much smaller. And, in a context of not having, significant carrying costs from one year to the other, they wouldn't be as significant. But when you're outside of that context and, you're looking at, when this all adds up, a $2.1 million increase just for the level service budget, that's when some of these small numbers end up, becoming expensive. There was also a request to continue with the next generation science standards text at the high school. The high school, now they did file a grant, and maybe Linda can speak to this in a minute about the project Lead the Way for the high school. If the grant comes in, then we wouldn't need the funding in the local budget for that, but that's an initiative that the high school would like to move forward with. There's some diagnostic and progress monitoring software that's necessary. We have an issue that's kind of a pitfall in the budget right now, similar to some of the SPED stuff. We don't actually have a line item in the event that, some of our security, say a camera or a monitor or whatever fails. We don't have a repair budget for that. So that basically right now just goes back to technology and ends up coming away from the technology budget. And then there were other, obviously within the hundreds of lines of the budget, there's little ups and downs that add up to about $84,000. But the big takeaway from this is that, our level service just carrying cost budget from 16 to 17 is $2.1 million. That's a huge number, and I think that's a number that, again, we need to make the corrections with the special ed costs. But again, that that's vulnerable, and that can go up and down from year to year. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry, thank you. Other considerations for you is that in the fiscal 16 budget, and this is a discussion we don't have to have tonight, but we need to have as we get into the budget, all of the circuit breaker funds were allocated towards covering the SPED, tuition or transportation costs. What is going to be the school committee's, this 2.1 level service budget assumes that same philosophy. Now, I think we need to change from that philosophy, and we need to somehow put aside some funding for extra costs that are going to come up during the course of the year that we just can't anticipate. The student that moves in from another district, the student in our district, we have taken a look at all the known students we have. We've taken a look at all the kids that are potentials, and we've made some calculations on those. But I can't tell you that, next fall, we're not going to receive a student from, Westford or another community that's going to move in. There's no way to budget for that. So we need to, as a group, have some discussion about what we want to have as a set-aside for special education extenuating circumstance costs. And that also just adds to this. The next factor is all of our contracts for, teachers, administrators right down the line end on June 30th. So we're going to start collective bargaining in the next number of weeks with all of our various unions, and I wanted to let you know the number on this. We're looking at about a $39.9 million personnel cost in our budget, which again equates to a $400,000 cost per percent for any kind of COLA when we start negotiating. So a 1% increase in salaries across the board for all school personnel is a $400,000 add-on to the budget. You look at a 1 or you look at a 2% cost of living increase, a 2% COLA adds $800,000 to your bottom line. And again, that doesn't go away. It just it multiplies and continues to compound for years to come. So as we're actually kind of finalizing this preliminary budget and trying to get information and data to you, the tack that I was going to take was to produce a level service budget that would actually have all of these carrying costs in it. And then as we met with all the different schools and programs, we have lists of wants and needs from the various schools and constituents. We would bring that together also in more of a list form so that we could have a dialogue, because I don't want to lose sight of some of those needs and wants that are coming in from the schools, and start to have that dialogue. And what I proposed was that, if you receive a preliminary budget on the 9th, we still have a few months to town meeting, and we're still going to have follow-up conversations with the town manager about the status of the budget recommendations. But perhaps either the meeting after the vacation on the 23rd or the meeting on March 1st, if you would want to either designate half of each or one or the other, just to primarily have a school committee dialogue and review of the kind of the school by school line item details, so that we can answer questions for you, and then use the month of March to really have follow-up discussions on that. So I throw that out for dialogue, but I wanted to get the ball rolling with regard to, kind of painting a picture for you with where we stand against other comparable communities, but then also some of the challenges that we're facing with even just to provide a level service budget on top of, some of the other, desires that we may have about increased programs.
It's very cheerful.
Well, it's the beginning of letting everybody know the situation we're in, so you're getting the information out as soon as possible. That's a big deal, Dr. Lang. So letting people know that we have some real issues that we have to address, and certainly when we go to the tri-board meeting, and certainly when we get together with the entire community, they realize what's happening. So thank you very much. I think this was very helpful.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the takeaway for me, and obviously, we want to get the information out as quickly as we have it. We want to have this be an open dialogue. But I think when we start to talk about more setting expectations in the long run, I mean, we'll work through this and we'll put a good budget in place for 17. I'm sure we will. But these are kind of discussions that the community needs to have, not only on our side, but the town side also. These are recurring things. You know, you're looking at, you know, easily, you know, that $1.5 million to $2 million a year is almost just going to be the cost of your carrying cost just to do a level service budget. And I know, you know, my conversations with the town manager, he's been very, you know, helpful and insightful about, you know, the different funding mechanisms, and they're constrained with regard to how much, you know, property tax can go up and what kind of fees can come in. So it certainly puts not only the schools but the town departments in a challenging environment where you don't have a lot of control over your revenues, and yet your expenses are somewhat spiraling, you know, out of control. So if anything more, I think it also kind of just, these are conversations we need to continue to have because they're going to be annual issues. You know, if we're really not adjusting the base or adjusting the amount of revenue that you have to offset it. So I know it's not a rosy picture, but it's a realistic picture. That's right. And I just think it's worth you know, having and talking about.
Rosy, realistic, worst case scenario?
Well, you can never say never. No, I mean, yes, is this a realistic budget as far as level service? Yes, I mean, this is a realistic budget on that. You know, we need to have dialogue about collective bargaining, how we're going to handle that. And, you know, the other an elephant in the room is you don't know what's happening with some of these special ed costs from year to year. So, yes, it's realistic now, but you know, some of the cases and some of the services you see that, you know, we just can't control. Not only Chelmsford, but every community is battling. And, you know, it's almost, it has to be somewhat of a snapshot in time that, yes, you know, I think it is going to cost us the 2.1 just for the level service. And that's with no frills. I mean, that's with no major ads. And I know there's also a lot of need. You know, we heard tonight the class size issue. You know, we may need to move some staff around the district to accomplish some of these the objectives that we want to do, and you know, we still have other needs within other buildings within the district. So it's going to be a struggle, but you know, manageable. I just think it's important we start talking about it now, and it's important that everyone has the information and the context. And I hope it's helpful, and I'd love feedback tonight or later about, you know, what other kind of analyses would be helpful to you as far as, you know, when we look at comparable communities or other kind of data that would be helpful to be presented. I tried to take a look back at some of the previous meetings and even, you know, presentations that were made to other public boards about what seemed to be questions that came up about, say, class size or about, you know, spending in comparable communities. So if there are other areas that you want me to investigate, you know, I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to kind of craft the message for the budget book. You know, let me know what you think and how I can make it more informative to the public.
I think that the slides that you had and the graphs and all that information in terms of comparisons with DART communities and what's on the DOE website, that's helpful when you put together supporting data so that everyone can see that we are not being excessive in what it is that we are spending or requesting for funding.
Right.
That being stated, it doesn't matter how many things that you compare with in terms of communities to try to form some kind of a case.
Right.
It only matters what people in Chelmsford want to spend.
Right.
And what we have available, which no matter how many arguments we've had in the past, it comes, bottom line is the will of the people in terms of spending for education and how much money that the town manager has. Most of what you've done in trying to identify the drivers are things that I would have had questions on, and especially it's nice being able to go into collective bargaining, having a clue as to what that impact may be. Have we had a review of all our contracted services and when the different ones are up to see whether or not there's any vendors that are out there where there may be some projected savings?
Yeah, we don't have, I mean, yes, we look at that, you know, regularly. We don't have any major contracts up this year. I mean, the Aramark contract for the custodial cleaning services is a big one. We're also looking at the legal services, as you know, for both the regular ed and SPED. I mean, those are two big ones. The only other big contracts we have are for the regular ed and the special education transportation. We have one more year left on the regular ed transportation, so that'll be something we look at next year. And SPED, we're only in year one of a 3-year. So those are really the big contracts that have the most impact. A lot of the other service contracts are renewed on an annual basis. They're typically based on the dollar value. They'd either be bid or it could be state contract vendors that do that service work. But they're not significant in size, like a transportation contract would be, or say the custodial services contract would be.
So we're also looking at this, in terms of the custodial services with what you presented before, depending upon where those numbers go, we're looking at an increase that will have the same service, but we're going to have an increased cost.
Yeah, under either scenario, because there were the three scenarios. There was the rebid the entire thing with an outside company, bring it all back in-house with our own staff, or the third option was the hybrid option.
Right.
All three of those options are costing us more money. Because the cheapest of those three options would probably be the total outsource of the contract, but that's also the total outsourcing of your control, and that's, we're not satisfied with the level of, I don't think anyone is, the level of cleanliness that we're receiving now. So we would have to build into that outsourced contract more services, which are just gonna cost more. And even when we talk to the town manager on that, I think we all agree, all three options are costing us more. It's just a matter of how much more. I think the cheapest would have been just the total outsource again, even though it would cost us more. The most expensive is probably gonna be to bring them all back in-house. So that's why I used kind of the worst case scenario on that for the budget planning purposes. And that's a number that I actually see, going down. So I wanted to put in the worst case to come down as we're starting to look at the budget. There will be other tweaks as we go along too. We only received last week, the teachers have to notify you that they're going to retire at the end of the year, but then they have that rescission period. So now we finally have the letters back, and we've been able to quantify exactly how many staff are going to be leaving at the end of the year. So we can now go in and make some adjustments, some downgrades to salaries, because if you have someone leaving on step 10, and we have to have this dialogue also, but do we want to budget, say, step 4 or whatever it's going to be, you're going to see that savings. So yes, the salary side is going to come down a little bit, because I think we probably have 10 or 12 people in the district that are retiring, so there's going to be a reduction. So that 2.1 will come down a tad from there. But you're not talking $500,000. These are the big numbers that are going to hurt our ability to move forward. But they're recurring. They're annual costs that are going to keep hitting us.
But at least you have some numbers going forward for tomorrow night's tri-board meeting.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely have numbers tonight, and I can make this presentation available if people ask. We did meet again. Michelle and I with the town manager and the town staff, and just talked about the 2.1 kind of being what our carrying cost for the year is. I know they're going to work to try to allocate as much money as they possibly can to schools. I do truly feel they value spending money in education. I just none of us know until we see the actual budget and what's going to happen on the cherry sheet tomorrow with some of the offsetting numbers, what's going to really happen. Funding-wise, it looks like preliminarily the unrestricted local aid is going to receive about a $4.4 or $4.6 million increase, which is good. We were hoping that was also going to go for the Chapter 70 aid, but now we're hearing that might only be 1.5% or 1.6%. Those are $100,000 swings that really affect us. But I think the key really is what is going to happen with the charter school assessment and what's going to happen with the charter school reimbursement, because those numbers on the cherry sheet really affect your education aid, and it affects the town's ability to give us money and the money that we're asking for. So we'll have a better idea tomorrow, and Paul did indicate he's going to present that tomorrow night, and we just need to keep that dialogue going.
Dr. Lane, do you think it would be helpful if you had a chart or some way of explaining some of the increases in the unfunded mandates or some of the increases in transportation from maybe going back a couple of years ago and bring it to where you are today, so people realize, because they see that small increase, but if you could bring them all the way back to where it was to where it is today, I don't know, you think that would be helpful? Because if I was looking at some of those unfunded mandates, I just want people to understand that some of the expenses that we're incurring, they're being literally placed on our backs that people don't realize, but they see that nominal increase or they see that one line budget number. It doesn't tell the whole story of where this board or where the school system has started with. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
team? Is that, you know what I'm trying to say, Mike?
Yeah, we've been looking for that chart for a long time. But I think you're right. If you can show how some of those costs that are baked in have been ramping up, and you're right, it's easier to see it over a 3 or a 4 year period, to see kind of the upward pressure that it puts on your budget number. I think Evelyn said it best. We can do comparisons until the cows come home, but at the end of the day, it's about what can the residential taxpayer of Chelmsford afford? Because really, they're the ones picking up the bill, and you know, trees don't grow to the sky. I'm concerned about the 2.1. I mean, I really like the way you got there. I think the budget, the narrative part of it, the back end is the most important thing you've done. But I do appreciate the discussion of the net school spending. That is something that has not really been touched on in Chelmsford before, and I think you did a nice job of kind of bringing out both sides of it. The fact that the town is above net school spending, but when you look at other comparable towns and really the rest of the state, we are not as far above as most are. And when you compare to our DART districts, who are towns that look like us in terms of demographics and test scores, yeah, we're towards the bottom of that pile. I think that's all helpful. As we go on, I think it's worth this committee and yourself talking a little bit more about what other kinds of things we could see. But I think this is an excellent basis. And if something like this winds up in the Springtown meeting book or as a separate copy, I think it'll be the most informative presentation the town meeting has received in many, many years. I did just want to check, you mentioned the set aside and the circuit breaker. The numbers that you've put up here are assuming that we carry nothing out of this year, but they're not necessarily expending next year's funds, or are you fully expending those as well?
Yes, that's another adjustment that we're going to have. What I was trying to do for tonight was really just show you, if the 17 budget was predicated and based on the exact same way that we built the 16, then the 16 budget was made totally using all your circuit breaker funds.
Yeah.
Now, I do hope at the end of this year, there are some circuit breaker funds that are left. If we have any, surpluses in the budget, at the end of the year, we should allocate those back to SPED so that we can carry a little bit of a cushion on the SPED. That's going to help us. But no, right now, that would just be fully expending all of your circuit breaker account. And I do think we need to have that dialogue, because we're going to need to find $250,000 to $500,000 somewhere, or we potentially could find ourselves in the same situation next fall if we get move-ins over the summer or the fall, and all of a sudden we have tuitions to pay. But I think that was a discussion I think we needed to all have about what do we feel comfortable with, and I think that's a discussion we should have with Tri-Board and the town manager also.
I think we have to have it with the town as well, because again, it's something that came out this year. Ultimately, the town is our last resort for covering those SPED bills. We don't run a reserve fund the way the town does, and we have to rely on them if we have unexpected costs.
Right.
There's no way around it. So yeah, I think that's a discussion that needs to be had with a lot of people. And I'm concerned that, I'll cross my fingers on the cherry sheets, but I'm concerned that in addition to that, $300,000 to $500,000 set aside you're talking about for the circuit breaker, we need to find another $300,000 to $500,000 out of this $2.1 million.
Now, Carol is monitoring the potential out-of-district placements. You had said that on a monthly basis should be looking at it, so we know.
Carol is,
yeah.
Yeah. And Michelle, and to be honest with you, it's so important, we're all on it. I feel like we're living and breathing with these kids and their placements. And no, I mean, that piece we're on. I think it's just such an unpredictable nature, but particularly the students that come into the district that we just don't know about. The move-ins, and again, a lot of it's programmatic. Depends on what type of program it is and when you need to pick up the tuitions. It's a lot. I mean, we're on top of it as much as we can, but we can't predict kids coming from other communities. And that's where, when we actually settle on this budget, I think it's important that everyone knows, to what limits are we going to set money aside? You know, because I don't want anyone to ever, you know, scrutinize us or question, well, why would we try to put aside a little cushion of $500,000 or $250,000, whatever it ends up being? That's why it's important for us, the Board of Selectmen, the Tri-Board, to all know what our strategy is, and that money is sitting there in the event that we have these special ed tuitions that come in that are unpredicted. We don't have to spend it. I don't want to spend it. You know, we'll roll it to the next year, and then that'll be the cushion, and that might provide us a little budget relief to our base. But that's the predicament, and that's where I think we all just need to be on the same page about how much risk do we want to assume, and how much is reasonable to put aside with all of these competing interests. You know, that's the situation.
On a smaller note, in terms of increases, it would be the homeless situation if we had more busing out of district. We had a brief discussion about, or have in the past, on the Board of Health, changing the rules and the regulations. And in some cases, if the students are moving around, we may have a hit to our budget relative to that. Even though there's some reimbursement from the state, it's never quite enough, and they keep reducing it. So those transportation costs with those students may increase if it becomes a trend, with the Board of Health restricting how long they can stay in those buildings.
Yeah, I mean, my hope would be that if that does prevail and, you know, the state stops taking in new families, you know, that would be, not the state, the hotels stop taking in new families. I'd love for the existing families to be taken care of, and you know, I'm not looking for anything to happen there. But just even stopping new ones coming in, you know, would be helpful in the long run. Because, you know, yes, we're transporting, you know, kids back to other districts that they were in. But, you know, they've moved to other districts, but they're still transporting back to us. You know, we have special needs homeless students. So not only are you paying transportation under homeless McKinney-Vento, but you're also paying, you know, out-of-district tuitions for students, or programs and services for students that are homeless that really, you know, just kind of came to us. So no, it's an issue. But like I said, I thought it important tonight to at least kind of frame the discussion before we go into Tri-Board tomorrow. You know, we're not prepared with the entire document, but we'll have that for the next meeting. But do you agree with the tact of kind of having a more formalized budget that lays out this whole level service budget, and then still talk about some of the other issues that need some attention, or at least need dialogue? But to be able to start that, and it's got to be a sign somewhere. And how do you feel about the either that last meeting in February or first meeting in March, setting aside either time, really keeping the agenda light so that we can really focus on budget, or would you want to do it on an alternate, a different night? And I just kind of wanted to get your feeling on how you wanted to approach that. And you don't have to tell me tonight if we want to decide at the next meeting, but I just didn't know how you felt.
You know, the thing about having it on one night is that it kind of builds it up a little bit, and maybe it's a signal to people in town who want to come and participate in that discussion that that's a good night to be there. On the other hand, if we do it, or if we take input on a couple of different nights, maybe more people have a chance. So
If they can't make one, they can make the other.
yeah, I mean, we do take, one of the things that I've been trying to emphasize in my discussions with people right now is that now's a good time to come talk to us about the budget. And we saw it from the folks from Byam. I think that was entirely appropriate and very helpful, and I hope we'll hear from other people who have concerns like that. I could go either way, but I guess my inclination would be to do it one big night.
Fine with me.
Yeah.
Would you want to do it?
Is that the best night?
My reading, we're on the 9th, the 23rd, and then again the following week, the March 1st, is that correct?
Yeah, because we moved the February vacation meeting to the 23rd. But if you wanted, we could maybe do
Well, maybe
March
that's a
1st,
good,
because
you know,
you're
maybe
right.
that second Tuesday is a good one to have a light agenda, everything else, if we can get.
You mean the first?
On the
Because
first,
you're
yeah,
back to back.
right. Mhm.
And that's all we talk about on the first is the budget.
Yeah.
No, that's the 9th.
23rd?
No, we have nothing on the 23rd. We just have a regular meeting.
Yeah.
You're
I
away.
think we could have a light agenda, either the last meeting of February or the first one of March. Just make sure we clear the decks with the other one.
Are you going to present a budget similar to what Frank Antonelli presented last year with the line items in the big thick book?
We're still looking
Per
through
school?
that. I mean, yes, there will be a school-based budget. It might have a slightly different look to it, but no, it'll be a line item budget by school, and, you know,
That
just
was
trying to-
really informative. You could really wrap your head around all the details. Not everybody likes those kind of details, but I did.
You'll get a lot of details. Would we want to do, I only say this for Evelyn's sake, because I know she's away the 23rd. Do we want to do the budget focus meeting on the 1st?
Yeah,
March
let's
1st?
do that the first time.
Would that be all right? And keep it, so we'll load the 23rd if we need to with kind of business and whatnot.
We'll do
keep-
policy on the 23rd.
Perfect. Yeah.
Oh, God.
I feel a sore throat coming on.
Maybe it'll be limited since I'm not there and I can just breeze through it.
I have a question. Full-day kindergarten is on the agenda for tomorrow night. What are we going to say?
And it's not in here. I had it in my old action item list. I think, you know, my feeling is that nothing has changed since the last time we talked about it, which was that we were gonna do the comprehensive facility assessment. We were gonna use that as kind of a springboard into putting together a really comprehensive full-day kindergarten plan. It's hard to know about your staffing costs and your supply costs and the rest of it until you know where the kids are gonna go. That's kind of a key component to figuring out what the bus routes are gonna be and things like that. So my impression is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but nothing has really changed since December. And so where we are is that we're going forward with the comprehensive facilities assessment. That should be done in like June.
Yeah,
I think we decided was
Late spring, early
probably
summer.
the final delivery. And at that point, we've already done a survey of the literature. We've already done site visits. I think that probably needs to be repackaged, but I don't think it needs to be redone. And then the last part of it is the financial part of it, and we need to know what it's going to cost to staff. We have to have a plan to deal with that, and I think that can all be done in a very timely manner in, say, August and September. That gives us good time to get the grant work rolling, and to let the parents know.
You gotta have space.
Right. To know in good time so that they can make their decisions in November, December about where they want to send their kids.
So in summary, it would just be premature to talk about it until all
we get
that's
the
done.
comprehensive facility assessment done, I
Just so we're all
think
on
we're
the same
jumping the
page.
game, the gun.
Yeah, I don't think anything changed since our last dialogue, so we can just maybe communicate that and communicate the timeline if it comes up. But I agree with you, we need to finish the assessment and, you know, get our ducks in a row in the fall as far as the financial piece, and then, you know, be looking towards implementing in 17, 18.
Mm-hmm.
All set.
Okay, so we'll continue working on the budget. Want to get that to you. The other thing that has always been helpful to me is as you're reviewing documents or things you just kind of think about that would be helpful to have prior to the budget deliberation meeting. Just call me, text me, email me. Thoughts that you want me to pull together, because if I can do that and then get you the information before the meeting, it just makes the budget deliberation night that much more productive. So please don't feel like you're bothering me. Email me and just ask me for anything you need, so that we can make those meetings as productive as possible. And we'll make sure as we go along the way, all of this information is posted to the website so that the community can follow us too, and we'll set up a little link to all the budget stuff.
Just one quick thing. If it comes up about increasing fees or anything as a source of income, our position is we have no intention to doing that. Or is that premature?
No, I wouldn't do that, because because it gives a false sense of revenue, that it's all in the backs of the parents. And you and I have agreed over many years, that once you put the fee in place, you never get rid of it. And every time you increase it, it's never going down. So I think keeping where it's at, people need to understand exactly how much public education costs with public money versus private money.
It's just going to come up because of the nature of the situation we're in. There isn't any new money, as a generalization from a lot of other places, so people are going to start looking where we're going to go. And I know where I am. support any
I
increase.
think not just us, but again, all you have to do is go to any PTO meeting and ask the question, how about we increase the busing fees? And, you know, the people who are impacted understand what's going on. The only people in town who are in favor of raising fees are the ones who think they're not going to pay.
We just have to be ready to fight that fight. I'm sorry.
No problem. Item number 6 on the agenda is just a recommendation to formally accept a few donations that we received. It had been publicized a week or two ago about our work with the school health nurse unit to implement having access to Narcan in the schools. 2 community partners stepped forward and provided a donation. John Chemley from Trinity EMS and then Joe Reddy from Reddy Realty. Each donated $300 to our cause. It was going to cost us about $600 to provide the prescription to be able to outfit the nurses with that. There's a little bit of a detail and a rationale that Kathy Rossman, the department head for nursing, provided for us. I'd like to thank her for putting that together in her work with Dr. Kaplan, who is a school physician but also on the Board of Health in Chelmsford, and just like to bring that forward as a recommendation to formally accept the donation, and we'll send them a letter of thanks on behalf of the committee after you do so.
That's fine.
That's fine. You need a motion?
Barbara makes the motion.
Barbara?
Strong arm there?
Yeah. Take some credit.
I just assumed that Sal would make the motion.
I make a motion to help me.
To send a letter of thanks and appreciation to John Chemley at Trinity Ambulance and Joe Reddy at Reddy Realty for their donation to fund Narcan in the schools.
Thank you.
You said it very well.
Perfect.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposition? I'd just like to comment before we move on from this. There was a lot of discussion on social media about this acceptance. And people, you know, are we doing this because there's a crisis at the high school? And my own personal opinion is that there's a crisis in our community and in our nation, and all we're doing is trying to provide another way of keeping our students as safe as we can. And so Chelmsford High School is no better or any worse than the situation that we're dealing with nationwide. And so, again, thanks to these people, but don't read into this that there's a huge problem at Chelmsford High School. It's just part of our community.
Okay, my favorite.
Policy?
Policies.
To rewrite it entirely.
The policy subcommittee met in order to start on a new section. We started on fiscal policies because we had sent changes to MASBO when we had the review. They had the review, and they made some other recommendations, and we're now going to be going through that particular section. So we met with Michelle Cresta, and we went through some of the changes. So let's start with 4101, fiscal management goals. The handouts that I have do not have them in red, but you can see where we've crossed some things out and added some other pieces to this. I don't know if anybody has any questions or any additions. Is this something new? Oh, I have a red one. Okay, thank you. I'm only doing the one that was in my packet. Obviously, at the last part, the expectations of the Chelmsford School Committee concerning the operation and maintenance of the school facilities and equipment include setting and upholding high standards for the health and safety of students and staff, reflecting the ethical and cultural standards of the community, supporting environmental efforts of the staff, and I have to renumber the bullets. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, move to approve the changes to policy 4101, fiscal management goals.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition?
4102, budget planning. Things were rearranged in this so it would read better. And I don't know if anybody has anything here in terms of how we plan the budget by having educational goals in the school committee, from the school system. The budget reflects the level of services that the Chelmsford School Committee plans to provide during the fiscal year. It's very appropriate at this time to be doing fiscal policy because a lot of these early ones deal with the budget, and it kind of dictates some of the process that we're going through. Local property taxes are the major source of income for the operation of the Chelmsford Public Schools. The Chelmsford School Committee respects the valid interests of taxpayers. The priorities in developing an annual budget will be the safety, health, and education of the students and staff in our schools.
The only comment I have on it is the very last paragraph, which says, "The Chelmsford School Committee will also meet periodically with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to develop a 5-year fiscal forecast and review future revenue projections in accordance with the development of the district's long-range comprehensive strategic plan." We don't really do that. And 5 years is a long time when our contracts are 3. I think that might be something maybe we should talk a little bit about, perhaps at the tri-board. And I know we receive the budgets and the projections from the town manager and from the superintendent. Perhaps that's what's being thought of here. But I can't think really of a 5-year plan that we have in place that's been developed collaboratively with the selectmen and the finance committee. And that includes financial and revenue projections for that 5-year period.
You want to rewrite the sentence or delete it?
I don't know. I don't like aspirational policy. If we say we're going to do it, then I think we ought to do it. I think it's a worthwhile goal.
Maybe it would come under something else in terms of, well, this is budget development.
Well, I mean, we could just say it's we have a just say that it's the tri-board meeting, and we're working to.
Well, you can easily put in there, the Chelmsford School Committee will also meet periodically with the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee to discuss. You can have that, to discuss budget.
About fiscal forecasts and future revenue projections.
That's fine.
Rather than saying
Yeah, I like
specifically
that.
5 years.
Fiscal forecasts and revenue projections, and leave it at that, and then I'll write that in. And then we'll take a look at that policy 3205 when we get there. I have forwarded Jay all of the 3000s, which is
Yeah, I saw
under his
It's up on the
purview. Yeah, so that he can look at that, so we can take a look at that. All right, I have that, and then I'll check back with you to also have that as a change. Does anybody else have any changes or recommendations? Okay, move to approve the changes in policy 4102, budget planning.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposition? None.
4103 is operating budget. We did make some changes with regard to this. In terms of the operating budget is the official representation of the sources of funds to support the Chelmsford Public Schools. The operating budget quantifies and qualifies the monies appropriated to support the educational programs, facilities, and staffing necessary to meet the mission statement of the Chelmsford Public Schools and the educational standards set by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Public school budgeting is governed by the legislature, state, and federal regulations, town charter and ordinances, and Chelmsford School Committee requirements. The superintendent shall serve as the budget officer for the committee. The superintendent shall present to the Chelmsford School Committee recommendations concerning the needs of the school system. Chelmsford School Committee, with the superintendent and the director of business and finance, shall develop the annual budget. In developing the annual budget, the Chelmsford School Committee will seek input during public sessions. Anybody have any questions?
You seem to be using annual there again.
Where?
In the second half of that third paragraph. Director of Budget and Finance shall develop the annual budget.
Operating.
Did you mean to say? Okay.
Yes.
And then also the sentence after that, in developing the annual budget.
Yes.
And then finally, presentation of the final proposed annual budget.
Could you do that again, please? I didn't get it.
Sorry. There's 3 annuals in the bottom
All right,
half.
thank you.
And
That's
He
fine.
wants me to change it to operating since we've crossed out annual.
just wondering.
That's fine. Well, that's why we have the editor.
Me.
Anything else? Move to approve 4103 operating budget.
Discussion. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposition? None.
Okay, policy 4104 is the public hearing on the budget. We made just some minor changes with that. We have a public hearing in April prior to town meeting, and it has been consistently held at central administration. What we did was just stated that that's where it was going to be, and that we would also make the proposed budget available there and on the website, so that people know that there is more than one location. Anybody have any questions? Move to approve 4104, public hearing on budget.
Second.
All in favor, aye. Aye. Any negative votes? None.
This is the one you want to change? Okay, we're not going to do 4105 because Mike has some changes he'd like to make to that.
I'd like to strike it and replace it in its entirety. This is something that I sent to Michelle earlier. She has some reservations. I think it needs to be discussed a little bit more broadly, but I'm going to read you what I have so that I can put it up on Dropbox, and then maybe people can communicate with Michelle about what she's looking at. It would be renamed Budget Adoption and Amendment. Authority for approval of the total amount of the Chelmsford Public Schools appropriated operating budget lies with town meeting. The recommended appropriate operating budget shall be presented as part of the total town budget for action at the annual spring town meeting. That's more or less the adoption part. Once town meeting has approved the total appropriated operating budget for the upcoming fiscal year, the Chelmsford School Committee shall vote to adopt the line item budget for that fiscal year, which shall include the appropriated operating budget, all grant-funded expenditures, and all revolving fund expenditures. This line item budget, together with the appropriated capital budget, will comprise the entire and complete planned expenditures by the Chelmsford Public Schools for the fiscal year. No expenditures exceeding the adopted amounts of any of the named line items, grants, or revolving funds in the line item budget shall be made without the voted approval of the Chelmsford School Committee. Recognizing the need for periodic reconciliation of the school department's budget to reflect changing needs and revenues, the Chelmsford School Committee shall consider all requests for transfers of fund between named line items, grants, or revolving funds as they are recommended by the superintendent. The Chelmsford School Committee may, upon a majority vote, amend the line item budget to reflect the recommended adjustments and to allow expenditures beyond those envisioned in the original adopted budget. All right, it's a lot of words all at once, but there's a couple of big changes here, right? One is reminding people that the town meeting only appropriates the bottom line, and it is up to us to distribute that amount of money to the various line items. The third paragraph is probably the big one, saying that no expenditures exceeding those adopted amounts can be made without our vote of approval. That is not exactly how we're operating today, although at this point I believe none of the lines that we approved have yet been exceeded. But that would be a little bit of a shift in behavior. So I think I'd like to hear both the superintendent and the director of budget talk about that a little bit. And then the last thing is kind of lumping together the operating budget, the grants, and the revolving funds. I think best practice would be to have an idea at the beginning of the fiscal year where all of your money is going to come from. Michelle made the point that you don't necessarily have all of your grant money at the beginning of the year, and so I don't want to write a policy that ties their hands or creates an impossible situation. So I mean, I will put this up on the Dropbox account. People can kind of discuss it with the superintendent and Michelle individually without it bleeding over into deliberation, and then maybe we can take it up again at a future meeting.
What we can do, Mike, is to take it to the next policy subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, that would be another time.
Because there are some other words within what you're requesting that there may be in terms of the grant money, and there are some words that you can put in there that would cover what you want and maybe cover what she wants. That I could think of while you were reading it, so that it doesn't tie your hands, and yet we get what we need. So I have some ideas with that. So what we're going to do is just move on from 4105, and we'll have it referred back to the policy subcommittee meeting, and then we can get to you and for clarification and see how you feel about those changes. Do you have any changes for the next one, 4106? Financial reports and statements.
Go ahead.
A year-to-date budget report generated from the district's accounting financial system displaying the original appropriation, transfers, revised budget, encumbrances, and available balance. That's what, when we have financial statements.
So look, my issue here is item number 3, a list of all accounts expected to exceed the appropriation, the reasons for the cost overrun, and the underexpended accounts which may be used to pay for the overrun. That is, again, it's simply not current practice. You have the year-to-date budget in front of you, which I would argue clearly shows accounts expected to exceed, and certainly gives some hints about which funds might be in surplus and used to pay. But there isn't a list of the reasons for the cost overrun, and so, you know, how do you want to deal with that? My inclination would be to strike that language. It will require us as a committee to be more vigilant in kind of asking these questions when we get the year-to-date budgets instead of just setting it on autopilot.
So just to reply to the line 3 that you're referring to, that was something that was in the very original finance, the one that we had. John Souza, I think it needs, no, yeah. From when Bob Cruikshank originally set forth to rewrite all these financial policies, and they were given to him.
And did he give you that information?
Well, these are the policies. I mean, I was there when they rewrote all the policies and gave it to us. I'm just letting you know.
I know.
And he put it in there.
I understand.
So if it hasn't been followed, maybe we do what is practice, we just take a look at 3.
So here's the problem with that, right? If we write policies and then don't follow them, how can we expect to say that somebody's doing the wrong thing if they don't follow the policies that we don't enforce?
Well, let me just put in here, not that we need to belabor this point, the reasons for the cost overrun. We have sat in the past and asked, when we see all these red lines in our monthly reports, why are they over? So we did ask. In some cases, we were given answers. So the reasons for the cost overrun, we asked, we were given reasons.
That's the trouble. I mean, I thought we had a very nice discussion tonight about why the superintendent line is over. And, you know, it's not a question of transparency. It's just a question of what do you want to see in that year-to-date report, because it already pretty much fills a sheet. I'm comfortable taking the responsibility on myself to ask those questions,
yes,
rather than having another form where each line item is listed and
That's
you know,
what I
some
heard
kind of.
Evelyn say. I mean, I thought you agreed. You know, we come up with the things through discussion, but we don't do it. You know, you're correct. We don't do that. I think we should strike it.
So, I mean, if it's in the policy, the policy is not saying we have to ask for the reason. The policy is saying that the reason should be provided if there's a cost overrun. We shouldn't have to be on notice to ask. There's a cost overrun in this line because.
Well,
How do you feel about it?
good mixed emotions. No, you know what the big thing is, like tonight with the superintendent's salary line, like you looked at the report, it was obvious that there was an issue, and we just explained it on the floor. That's a huge variance in the report, but there's another account that's like $99, you know, over. Or there's, you know, because of payroll encumbrances, there are a whole string of accounts that are, you know, 3 cents over because of the way the rounding worked. We couldn't produce a report, you know, saying why something was 3 cents over. If you really looked at it just based on the wording, then yeah, to have to produce a report like that would cripple the operation. Maybe is there a way to rework it and have it be like a particular, maybe it's a percentage of an overrun or something, or because I don't think your intent is to get a report for something $10 over.
No, I don't think that's what the intent was for it. It's that if you see a significant amount, now the question is, how do you determine the significant amount?
Right.
So do you have any logical way to determine is a percentage that triggers that type of an explanation? Many times we've had explanations when things like sped. I mean, that's a key piece. If we have out-of-district transportation, and that's a key piece because it's all linked with out-of-district placements. When sometimes coming in all of a sudden, I would say that most of the explanations we have is with sped. It's that all those other line items we don't have the expectation of an explanation.
What if we did this? Would you mind if we didn't act on this one tonight?
Fine.
If we go back and actually look at maybe like a percent expended, like, let's see what the exceptions are. Maybe it's like a line that's over 10% of the, like 110% projected. That'd be something we should report on. But that would alleviate any of the small little stuff. So let us figure out what an allowable percentage would be, and we can bring that back to the next policy meeting.
Okay. Was there anything else within this
No,
policy?
that's the one thing. It's just not what we're doing.
Okay. Policy 4201, revenues from state and local sources, and it just identifies them, and we just added federal in there. Does anybody have any?
An amount at least equal to. What? I do not want the town of Chelmsford to appropriate an amount equal to the sum of the minimum required local contribution for us.
What do you want that to say?
At least
Where?
equal to.
An amount? Oh, at least?
At least equal to.
Oh, okay, I get you. Intent.
As long as we're telling the town what to do.
Not that they're going to follow a policy. Okay, any other recommendations? Okay, move to approve policy 4201, revenues from state and local sources.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any negative? None.
4202, funding proposals and applications. The only thing that we added to this, because we've been getting updates on the state, federal, and other special funds and grants all the time, and all we did was add at the end, the Chelmsford School Committee will receive periodic status reports, because we didn't state that in the policy.
No, I think that's fine. I mean, we are receiving those at this point, so, right.
Right, so that's standard procedure.
Right.
Okay, move to approve 4202, funding proposals and applications.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
4301 is fiscal accounting. The superintendent shall be ultimately responsible for receiving and properly accounting for all funds of the school system. The accounting system used shall conform with Massachusetts Department of Revenue, Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education financial reporting requirements, and to generally accepted accounting principles providing for the appropriate separation of accounts, funds, and special monies. Do we use GAAP? We do, okay. On the financial, I mean, on the municipal side. Does anybody have any changes or corrections or questions?
Good.
Move to approve 4301 fiscal accounting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay.
4302 audits. This is a policy that just is referencing the annual town audit. And we added, and the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education end-of-year financial report. The town audit report is presented annually to the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen, and the superintendent and school committee members are encouraged to attend that meeting also. The superintendent shall be responsible for preparing a response to the audit findings. The school committee review and approve them within 60 days of such audit.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposition? None. All right, very good. Are there any liaison reports?
You're doing good. Sorry?
Any liaison reports?
You know what, I have one, and it's to follow up on something that Hannah Barker said. This issue of having all of the voting stations, or all but 2 of the voting stations at McCarthy, really kind of took off at the last PTO meeting. There was nobody there who thought it was a good idea. I understand the kids don't use the gym that day because the voters are, but it's right across the hallway from the cafeteria, and the pods are down that way. So there's some there's a lack of understanding there, I'd say, with the parents about how exactly their kids' days are going to get affected by having, you know, a presidential election bring people through. I think that's something that probably needs to be addressed, even if it's only just a talking tour. I think you and Kurt need to sit down with the parents and hear their concerns and maybe take a look at, you know, we've got a little while, but maybe that's not a good day for school.
Did this come up at a PTO meeting?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot of things in the PTO meeting, and there were a lot of opinions expressed, but what struck me was that they were all kind of one direction on having their kids there during the voting.
I received 2 reports tonight while we were sitting here. I forwarded to Jay about the dangers of polling places in schools. So I forwarded them to you. Studies that have been done.
Yeah.
Not being a place to have polling, at least not during school hours.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what we do. Short of moving the polling stations to the senior center, I don't know anywhere else that's that big in town.
It wasn't just your PTO that had some questions about it. There were other parents in the South Row District because they go to McCarthy. My other 2 liaisons go to Parker. So there were some questions, not through the PTO, but through individuals that have students not only here, but have students at McCarthy that have expressed concerns, safety concerns. There were even some people in the community that don't have kids in the system that were expressing concern. Do you have school on the days that you have voting? Because my understanding is in Lowell they don't. They
No, we
haven't.
do.
You do?
It is sketchy. It's a lot. We have it in multiple schools, though. I know it's.
We used to. They're consolidated.
The other thing in McCarthy is that there's not a ton of parking, and you've got to get the kids in and out in the morning and the afternoon. You know,
Usually
the
on a
buses-
presidential election, there is no school for students.
There is this year.
In the fall.
No, there should not be school for students during the presidential election, because we have never had
It's not-
that I can remember.
But it's not on the calendar as a day off.
It's a professional
Oh,
development
is it?
day. It is.
Well, the teachers come, but the kids don't.
Right. They use that as one of their days.
Never mind.
So it would just be other elections that there would be issues with, or if you have the primaries.
Primaries. It's primaries and like town elections in the spring.
As parking goes, a professional development day does not cure that issue.
Right.
Right? There's still, the teachers still park at McCarthy, so that doesn't free up any space.
I will talk to Kurt, and I can, put on my schedule over the next month or so to hit maybe the next PTO meeting at the school, and just try to gain some
Yeah,
perspective.
maybe,
from them.
you know what, maybe that's a good way to deal with it.
I'll do that.
And I'll just reiterate, tomorrow night is the Heritage Fest at Harrington. And if I can, I'll take a few pictures. I have to help set up.
Well, tomorrow night too is, because Hannah emailed me earlier today, so the council of schools, just so people watching know, move their meeting, it's still McCarthy in the library, but it moved to 6 o'clock instead
It's a
of,
problem for the Harrington reps, but they have 1 rep who can make it.
Okay.
I believe in.
Yeah, but I can also
Yeah, they
get
did.
there.
They
Yeah,
did,
6
but
o'clock,
Harrington has
McCarthy in the
their
library.
Heritage Festival.
Right. And one of the people that's running it is one of the reps.
Chelmsford High School PTO meeting was really productive, and there was a lot of, it was a fantastic conversation about some frustrations that parents were feeling. And I'm gonna just leave that at that. One thing though that came out of the discussion, and if there are parents listening, has to do with this after prom event. We are not getting tremendous support from parents. Maybe this event has come to its end, I don't know, but we need to hear from the parents that they feel strongly about having this event. It is a matter of safety for the parents who helped to put it on, but maybe that the day is gone, I don't know, but we definitely need to hear from parents that they want this event, so.
The other thing that I went to buy them, and they did address the class size issue, and I tried and made sure that they understood that we had this event, so that they were able to come to this event, so they had known about it to prepare. all of the wonderful information that they gave us this evening. Their other issue was the full-day kindergarten and trying to figure out, wrap their heads around why we can't do it. So we had more of a lengthy discussion about that. Just trying to make sure that the accurate facts are out there rather than kind of, people are saying things, it's like they're making things up that we're not able to do it, but we got all this money that we can do it. So we just want to make sure that everything, the information we have out there is accurate, coming at least from us, rather than just members of the community.
Anything else, liaison? Okay, in terms of past items, I went back and looked, and people may remember something. Just brought up about bringing Dorothy Presser back. Do we still need to do that? In some ways, I thought we got past that.
Well, she was going to come back to lead the second piece of the governance work.
Yeah, okay, we didn't do it.
We didn't really close it.
Yeah, okay. So
Plus, we also had some other financial and some questions on the warrant, just to make sure the public knows.
We're going to recognize 3M and Lockheed. Did we do that?
I believe we sent them a letter.
Okay. Star report.
Yeah, Mike can actually ask for that. And there is no annual report that the STARS program, and I apologize for not communicating this to the whole group, there's no annual report that STARS gives. There was a report a year or two ago that was like a statewide report that was issued, and I believe we emailed Mike the link, but I'll forward that to the rest of the committee.
Okay.
Right, but I think the intent of the change in the policy was that changes to the emergency plans be discussed with this group, with the school committee, so that we are aware of changes.
Is that what that was about?
I don't remember that, but could very well be.
I thought it was like an annual report that the STARS group issued.
The policy said, do you have last meeting's policies?
What would be in the Dropbox?
I'll have to dig it out. I will send it to you again.
I think we're supposed to get a report. Sorry.
Right, but that's what he's saying, is that there was no report equivalent to what was discussed in the policy. But my understanding of the intent was that changes in how emergency situations were going to be handled would at least be brought to this committee for discussion, if not review or approval.
Okay.
At this point, we don't really know what's being done.
By the way, it's 15:02.
Okay. I was totally reading this a different way, so I apologize for that. If we certainly can, that's not a public meeting that we would have. That would be an executive session. We certainly can have that, and we can even do like an annual meeting if you want to, just to review our emergency preparedness and plans and how we would deal with situations. We haven't made any revisions to the existing protocols and plans.
Right.
That is work that actually we're going to do this spring with the police and fire departments. But I didn't realize that's what you were asking, but we can certainly do that this spring.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. It's one of the holes in our oversight, quite frankly. It's hard to review performance on something we don't know anything about.
Sort of related to that, did anyone ever find out if they filled Walter Hedlund's position? Because that was, I forget how it came up, but we wanted that person involved, and
yeah, there's no. Is there an emergency
discussion of?
You know what? Let's ask that tomorrow.
Yeah, that's
at
good.
Tri-Board.
Good. All right. Tonight, things that came up: work session for Religious Day calendar. Cost of the superintendent settlement. Those, just so it comes up again, suggestion for tracking unfunded mandates over years and maybe some other things. We decided to hold on 4105, and then we just discussed about having some sort of discussion about having voting at schools, particularly the issue with McCarthy. Was there anything else?
The report on the fill rate, or
the
the substitutes report, but it's quarterly or whatever, right? 6 months. Also, did you talk to Desi about our school oversight policy, the private school.
Yes, but
Oh, yeah, I had that
I've received
too.
nothing
Policy
from them, so I have to follow through on that.
Yeah, it's just hanging out there until we learn more about that.
Right, and then there's also a follow-up on the 1301.01 policy. That's the one? That's the one in the, that's on the one that we gotta find out what community ed does or doesn't do, in terms of fields and rentals
the
and
rental
stuff.
one.
Yes.
Okay, I think that takes care of that. Any fresh questions? Thank you.
Stayed here the whole time, you don't have any questions?
She'll give you a call, so. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We're done.
Hear that?
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
We have a very quick executive session, and I'll get you right out of here. Hey, you just got a cup of coffee?